Chapter 14. In the darkness, Huaishir once again felt a numbing chill on her forehead. It was a terrifying premonition that appeared in countless nightmares, a skill formed from countless experiences of death. Death premonition had been activated. He didn't have time to think. He suddenly lay down and rolled on the ground crazily. He recalled the words that Crow had once said in his mind. Bitter and painful memories kept surging in his mind. Then there was a warm current in his right hand, and a handful of ashes was refined from the negative memories. In the loud sound of the ground shattering behind him, he held his breath and spread it out. There was a moment of silence. In the next second, he heard the shrill scream of the fierce ape. "Damn it, Light!" Yu Dongri shouted. "Light! Light! Light! Light!" Puffed. Although the situation was critical, Huaishir couldn't hold back his laughter. "Sorry, I didn't expect you to be F** King Intel." He didn't dare to dawdle. He took out Yu Dongri's phone from his handbag, turned on the flash, and threw it over. Catch! Pot! The phone shattered in midair. The fierce ape's face flashed in the swirling light. It seemed to have sensed Yu Dongri's power and wouldn't let go of any light. Huaishir's hands did not stop moving. She threw out her almost retired smartphone. Catch it again. Pot! The phone was crushed in midair again. Well, now both of them had lost their phones. Damn it, can't you slow down? Yu Dongri was furious. The first phone he threw out was crushed, and the second one was thrown out. It's fine if you move faster. Do you want to be faster or slower? Huaishir was also angry. As he fled in a panic, he kept pulling out bottles and jars from Yu Dongri's bag. Hand cream, catch. Pot! The phone was crushed. Then there was another gunshot. The muzzle flashed, but it wasn't clear whether it hit the strange monkey or not. Anyway, Huaishir felt that his heel seemed to have been swept by something. He was so scared that he almost collapsed on the ground. "You should have been more accurate." "Shut up," Yu Dongri shouted impatiently. "Do you still want your things?" Huaishir was angry. He grabbed another bottle and threw it out. "Eye cream, catch. Punt. Sunglasses and keys, catch." In the tense and fierce fight between Yu Dongri and the damn monkey, Huaishir kept throwing things. The sound of things breaking Yu Dongri's heart constantly sounded in the air. In the end, the bag was almost empty, so Huaishir simply threw it all at once. "Fairy water, eye cream, and what is this?" Huaishir took a look. A mirror. Catch! Even the ferocious ape was too lazy to pay attention to this pile of messy things. But it didn't expect that Yu Dongri would rush out and grab his mirror in midair. He didn't even care that the fierce ape was in front of him. In the blink of an eye, he caught it. Yu Dongri sneered at the ghost monkey in the dark. "Look at my beautiful face." The next moment, light burst out from his hand. It didn't expect that Huaishir and the others were waiting here. Yu Dongri, this flamboyant guy, even had a light on his mirror, and it was a 360-degree white and soft LED circular light tube with no blind spots. In the instant light, the fierce ape's sharp iron claws were only a few feet away from Yu Dongri's face. At that moment, its movement came to an abrupt halt. For a moment, he couldn't care about anyone else. Even Huaishir was tricked and accidentally saw his face. Then, as if frozen in place, he couldn't move. He screamed crazily. Yu Dongri didn't even adjust his posture while falling. He raised his gun and fired randomly. He emptied the last 2 bullets, but no blood spurted out. Until he fell in a sorry state and almost hit the ground face first, he hurriedly got up. Then, he heard the fierce ape's sharp cry. Its iron claws suddenly raised and clawed at his eyes. There was a muffled sound, and thick blood spurted out from the holes in the mask. This time, it couldn't see Yu Dongri's face anymore. It waved its arm and tore open a wound on Huaishir's arm. If Yu Dongri hadn't withdrawn his ability quickly, his neck would have been torn off. Huaishir's face was pale with fright. F***CK, Big Brother, is your ability useful or not? Yu Dongri was also indignant. "I don't have much hair left. There's nothing I can do. So, your great beauty mainly depends on your hair." The two of them rolled and crawled to the side. They didn't even dare to breathe. They tried to maintain silence and not make any sound. In the silence, Only the fierce ape with bleeding eyes kept wandering around. It tore apart everything that made a sound, until Huaishir heard a helpless sigh. Along with the sweeping of the strong wind, the dark clouds were shattered, and the moonlight illuminated the silent street. In front of the street, Ai Ching in a wheelchair was looking at them. She shook her head unhappily and slowly pushed the wheelchair forward. In the silence, only the sound of the wheelchair turning could be heard. The crazy, fierce ape screamed and suddenly turned its head. Its empty eyes stared in the direction of the sound. Pounce! Ai Ching shook her head impatiently and sighed. She took out a black, long, thick, and hard. Huaishir couldn't tell what model it was, a submachine gun. She skillfully pulled the safety. She aimed it forward and pulled the trigger. In an instant, Huaishir only saw a series of hot flashes spurred out from the barrel of the gun. In the sharp and sonorous sound, the fierce ape froze in midair. It shook crazily like a broken plastic bag floating in the wind. Finally, it fell to the ground, spasming and screaming in pain. After firing a magazine of bullets, Ai Ching indifferently pulled out the magazine and threw it to the side. Only the crisp sound of the shell falling to the ground could be heard. It's done. Just as Huaishir was stunned, the ragged monkey on the ground suddenly got up again and rushed to the side. It wanted to escape. Ai Ching didn't even bother to care. Then, a faint red dot appeared on the fierce ape's body. Bang! In an instant, a loud sound burst from the distance. Continuous rumbling sounds could be heard. The fierce ape seemed to have been struck by lightning. One of its legs suddenly exploded into a cloud of blood. Then, a large hole appeared in its chest. It was torn open from its back. Its internal organs spurted out like mud. Several large holes appeared on the ground. It was like a depression created by a hammer in an instant. Under the aim of the snipers in the distance, the monster instantly turned into a ragged doll. But what was incredible was that it was still alive. It struggled crazily. It used its hands and the remaining left leg to get up. It used its hands and feet to crawl out crazily. Its speed was incredible. In the end, it was almost floating on the ground. In an instant, it disappeared into the darkness under the continuous shooting. Until now, Yu Dongri finally breathed a sigh of relief. He sat on the ground, took out a cigarette from his pocket, lit it, and took a few puffs to catch his breath. If Ai Ching didn't come quickly, he would have died here. But when did you call the snipers? They're so fast. Guess. Ai Ching didn't answer directly. She just looked at him as if he was an idiot. Yu Dongri sighed helplessly. Well, it seemed that there was no need to call them. I'm afraid that there are many snipers taking turns to aim at me these 2 days. This woman is completely inhumane. I thought you could take care of it on your own. I didn't expect you to fall to the point where you are completely useless once the lights are turned off. Ai Ching mocked him mercilessly. She asked, "Did you find anything? I'm not sure about the soul's ability, but I seem to have seen its stigmata on the professor's genealogy chart." Yu Dongri scratched his head and thought for a while. It's probably Qi. He thought for a while and became more certain. The third stage, the ether-level stigmata, Qi, the legendary monster. It was said that its face was like a monkey, its body was like a raccoon, it had the limbs of a tiger and the tail of a snake. It could fly without wings. It seems that it just entered the ether level and can't fly too high. Otherwise, I will be dead today. Yu Dongri wiped the cold sweat off his face and panted. F***, I, a weakling who just entered the gold level, fought for half a day against an ether level higher than me, and still managed to survive. That was too close. Where did this ether level sublimata come from? I thought the professor was the only ether level in the whole of Xinhai. Even an ether level sublimata has appeared. This time, those guys really got themselves into big trouble. Ai Ching looked into the distance with schadenfreude. She knocked on the armrest of the wheelchair. At least the situation is not that bad. Your efforts have paid off. When necessary, there are more people who could be used as scapegoats. Yu Dongri was silent. Looking at the beautiful side profile, his heart chilled. To have such a horrible prosecutor, one could only say that life was hopeless. After a short moment of thought, Ai Ching raised her head and asked, Did you find anything else? Hmm? Nothing. Yu Dongri was taken aback, then shook his head furiously. Then let's continue with the operation. If I find any clues, I will let you know. She glanced at Yu Dongri one last time, then glanced at Huai Shi, but didn't say anything else. She turned her wheelchair around and left. After a long silence, Huai Shi finally reacted. Does she not like me that much? Yu Dongri rolled his eyes. I've never seen her like anyone before, okay? But you probably offended her too much last time. You're on your own now. He patted the youth's shoulder forcefully, but his heart couldn't help but sink. This was the only thing that he had been hiding. In the instant that the streetlight went out, he had sensed a weak fluctuation of origin substance behind him. This kid might have a chance of ascending. In the secret room, the master saw the bloody ape and froze in place. What's going on? This is a trap set up by the Astronomy Association, the ape screamed angrily. That kid has an ascendant as his bodyguard, and a sniper. The master froze in place. What are you still standing there for? The ape endured the pain and tore off its mask, revealing an old, twisted face filled with malice. I can't hold on much longer. Give me the origin substance now. The master subconsciously covered the box. But, there's not much origin substance left. Don't you still have a lot of old things to draw from? The ape crawled up from a bed, propped itself up on one leg, and pressed forward. Give it all to me. This is all, because I was cleaning up your mess. The master subconsciously pulled out the box, but it was snatched away. It impatiently opened the box and stared at the clear, misty spring water inside. It pounced on the box and began to suck in large mouthfuls. Very quickly, a sharp grinding sound could be heard. The sound of bones and flesh multiplying sounded like steel clashing against each other. New organs and limbs began to grow out of the broken body. After all of the limbs had finished growing, the master impatiently snatched the box back. When he saw that the origin substance at the bottom of the box had decreased quite a bit, his face paled. Where's the powder? Give me some too. The ape wiped its face, then pulled out a packet of powder from the master's pocket and inhaled it. After a moment of shuddering, its complexion improved. It staggered back a few steps and sat down on the bed. You're the person chosen by the gods. What do you plan to do next? The master was silent. He subconsciously nibbled on his fingers, as if he was thinking about something. After a long time, a savage expression flashed across his face. Since the Astronomy Association has set their sights on us, we can't stay in Shanghai any longer. He opened his mouth and looked at his bloodied finger, then said hoarsely, after the final mass tomorrow night, we'll change locations and leave through the night. There are still 6 months until the new year. If we work hard and gather enough origin substance, the gods won't blame us. What about the mission? The ape asked. What about the mission in the quarantine zone? The master trembled. He didn't say anything. Chapter 15. Early in the morning, dew condensed on the bough, and traces of wetness appeared on the cello case. In such humid weather, it was reasonable to take good care of them, but Huai Shi didn't have the mood to do so. After practicing the cello for 2 hours and meditating as usual, he sat on the steps of the garden in a daze. Then he felt a chill on his butt. I'll just put a cushion here another day. After he couldn't sit anymore, he stood up, patted the dust off his pants, and strolled aimlessly around the bear garden. The stitches on his arm still hurt as he swung his arm. It reminded him once again how dangerous he was last night. No, it should be said that it deeply reminded him what kind of situation he was in now. The current him was far from being able to guarantee his own safety. Although he often felt that it was meaningless to continue living such a poor and difficult life, no one would feel that it was better to be alive than to be dead. Besides, Huai Shi's life hadn't really begun yet. It was good to be alive. He wanted to stay a little longer. Are you in the garden in a daze again? He suddenly heard the sound of the crow landing on the fence. Can't you go somewhere else? Can't I like it? Then you have to work harder, Huai Shi. The sublimation is almost complete. She sighed in disappointment and raised her wings. Just a little bit more. Huai Shi couldn't raise his spirits at all. What's the use of the sublimation? Can you sprinkle more chili powder? No matter how powerful it is, It can't be compared to the one last night. How many times have I said that the calamity ash is just a byproduct of your soul attribute? Once the sublimation is complete, the power of your soul will have a breakthrough. Besides, do you really think that the monkey yesterday really relied on his own ability? Oh, the sacred mark in the Ingzhou Monogatari genealogy belongs to the third stage of etherization. Crow looked at him meaningfully. Ascension is just the beginning. Why sure? Ascenders with great potential usually awaken at the age of 11 or 12. You're already a step behind, so don't slack off. Perhaps you wish to return to tranquility after this, but I think you must first understand that the owner of the Book of Destiny is destined to step on the path to the peak of this world. Power, wealth, and beauties are all within reach, but it is impossible for them to have a peaceful life. Huaisha was silent for a long time before he held the notebook in his hand. Is it too late for me to throw this thing away? Crow thought for a moment and suddenly became excited. Although I don't recommend you do this, this has never happened before in history. I'm very curious what will happen when the time comes. Why don't you give it a try? Huaisha rolled his eyes. So, since you can't resist, just enjoy it. Crow stretched out his wings sympathetically and patted him on the shoulder. At least, you still have a peaceful life in a certain sense. Yes, he ignored the fact that he was so poor that he had to work in a brothel, that he was inexplicably chased by undead on the road, and that he was now living with a bald cowherd and being used as bait. For some reason, thinking of this, Huaisha suddenly thought of a girl he had only seen twice, a girl in a wheelchair who seemed to be only 2 or 3 years older than him. Ai Ching. He seemed to have seen her somewhere before, but if he thought about it carefully, he didn't seem to have any similar memories in the short and empty first half of his life. No matter what, no one would forget such a beautiful young lady sitting in a wheelchair, right? He scratched his head, but no matter how hard he thought, he couldn't remember. It wasn't until the sound of a car horn at the door reminded him to go to work that he reluctantly picked up the piano case and walked out. The half-assed cowherd Huaisha ushered in a new day of torment, and then, of course, he got into trouble. Didn't you come to work here to sell? Why are you pretending to be a wolf in sheep's clothing? In front of you, Dongri, the lean woman who was old enough to be Huaisha's mother, angrily pointed at Huaisha behind him and suddenly threw a glass of wine at him. I've opened more than a dozen champagne towers here. Can't he come over and have a few drinks with me? Do you really think you're a fairy? Call your manager out. I don't King believe it today. In the chaos, Huaisha laughed dryly at the back, not knowing what to say. In the end, he was pushed out in a flurry. After a while, Yu Dongri finally settled the trouble. After searching for a long time, he found Huaisha waiting for lunch in front of the pancake stall at the back door of the clubhouse. This guy had been arrogant since he had an allowance of 800 yuan a day. He even dared to buy pancakes with 2 ham sausages. He looked so happy that Yu Dongri, who was originally depressed, couldn't help but click his tongue in amazement. How did you get 6 complaints on the second day of work? Huaisha thought seriously for a long time and asked tentatively, maybe it's because I'm good-looking? Huaisha, Yu Dongri sighed. You've been splashed with wine and scratched on your face. Why do you look like you're fine? What can I do? Huaisha looked at him blankly. When we go back, kick her in the ass and tell her not to bully a poor young man. Besides, it's all expected. What's there to be angry about? If I was angry about this, I would have died 4 or 5 years ago. Yu Dongri was speechless. He could only say, this guy always has some unexpected strengths and strange aspects. Ever since he made things difficult for Huaisha at work, there had been a lot of annoying things, but he had never seen this guy throw a tantrum or flip the table. Even when he was splashed with wine, he just smiled and moved to the side. He did not fight back when he was hit or scolded. Although he talked dirty in private, his patience was so good that it made people speechless. For an optimist to be so happy to such an extent, it made people wonder if he was an idiot or something else. Looking at him smiling and waiting for the pancakes, Yu Dongri didn't know why, but he always felt a little irritated. He always felt like he was forcing a good girl into prostitution and bullying an honest person. His conscience had been greatly damaged. Don't wait. Let's go. Yu Dongri pulled it back to change clothes. We don't have to work in the afternoon. I'll take you to eat something good. Are you serious? You finally have a conscience? Huaishir was surprised. Then when are you going to pay the electricity bill? Yu Dongri was going up the stairs and almost twisted his waist. He looked back and glared. I can be your bodyguard for free, but why do I have to pay the electricity bill? You want to use the water heater? Huaishir said, Can't I take a cold shower? Hey, do you have a conscience? I was injured to save you yesterday. Besides, taking a cold shower is bad for the skin. Yeah, it's also bad for the hair. Huaishir, who was following behind, added. It was visible to the naked eye that Lu Dongli, who was on the stairs, staggered and almost rolled down. When changing clothes, Huaishir specially wore sunglasses and a huge mask to cover his face. He looked like an outlaw who was ready to cause trouble at any time. It couldn't be helped. It was one thing to work in a brothel, but it was another thing to be seen and photographed by classmates. It wasn't easy to fool them last time. This time, he couldn't be recognized. Unfortunately, things often didn't work according to one's will. Huaishir, who was always unlucky, had just stepped out when he heard shouts behind him. Is it Little Shir? It's Little Shir. Chapter 16. Is it Xiao Shir? It's Xiao Shir. Before Huaishir could react, he saw a thin woman standing behind him. Her face was a little sallow, and she was wearing a plush hat in the summer, but he couldn't see any trace of hair. Sister-in-law? After not seeing her for a while, Huaishir couldn't recognize her. He wasn't sure if she was Lao Yang's wife, the black-hearted intermediary. She could be said to be the last conscience of Lao Yang's family. In the past, when Huaishir saw her, she was still a beauty with waist-length black hair and a rosy complexion. But now, her long hair had fallen out during the chemotherapy, and her face was unbelievably weak. Only her smile was still warm. Hey, your brother Yang said you were working here these 2 days. I didn't believe it, but I didn't expect it to be true. Without waiting for Huaishir to speak, she walked up with one hand holding the vegetables and the other holding Huaishir. You haven't eaten yet, right? Let's go. It's your brother Yang's birthday today. Let's eat at home. Half an hour later, separated by the boiling hot pot on the table, Huaishir and Lao Yang looked at each other in silence. After a long time, Lao Yang glanced at his wife who was busy in the kitchen. He turned around and said faintly, I asked you to come, and you really came. Isn't that so? Huaishir slapped his knee. Didn't you say you were going to treat me to a meal? I was just being polite. Don't take it seriously. Then what about the matter of you stuffing me into the cowherd's nest? Isn't that a misunderstanding? Lao Yang rolled his eyes to the ceiling. Besides, aren't you very happy doing it? Even your colleagues came. It can be seen that horses of great talent are common, but Bolu is rare. That's enough from you. Huaishir was angry at the mention of this matter. If this grandson didn't have a conscience for a little intermediary fee, would Huaishir be so unlucky now? Is it time to eat? I'm hungry. Yu Dongri, who was sitting in the corner of the living room, raised his head and asked. This grandson was also the kind of person who would not stand on ceremony with others. When someone invited him to a meal, he would not hesitate to follow. At this moment, he was squatting in front of the fish tank and playing with Lao Yang's feed. Lao Yang was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Hey, I'm coming. I've kept everyone waiting. Come, let's eat. The sister-in-law came out of the kitchen with the cut vegetables and called Yu Dongri to eat with her. She also prepared the dipping sauce for them. Looking at Lao Yang's unhappy expression, she glared at him. Xiao Shir, it's not easy for you to come to our door. Who are you throwing your face at? Hey, is this Shika-chan's colleague? You look so handsome. Come, let's eat. After being glared at by his wife, Lao Yang was no longer angry. He listlessly added a piece of meat and dipped it in. He muttered that Huaishir did not give him a commission this time. Together with Lao Yang's angry face, Huaishir enjoyed the meal. After the meal, Lao Yang was sent to the kitchen to wash the dishes. Huaishir sat in the living room and chatted with the sister-in-law. Her complexion was much better than before. It seemed that the money Lao Yang had gone against his conscience to get was useful. Live one day less, live one day at a time. The sister-in-law ignored Huaishir's dissuasion and lit a cigarette indifferently. It's fine that this illness is tormenting me alone, but it also caused Lao Yang to suffer so much. I feel bad in my heart. How can you say that? Lao Yang eavesdropped in the kitchen and poked his head out. He was immediately furious. Li Xiume, what are you doing? What did the doctor say? Put out the cigarette. Immediately. Immediately. What did you say? The sister-in-law looked back at him. Lao Yang's legs went soft and his voice lowered. Please put out the cigarette. That's more like it. The sister-in-law looked to Huai Shi proudly and threw the cigarette into the ashtray. She whispered to Huai Shi, did you see that? In the future, if he cheats you of money, just tell me. I'll teach him a lesson. Okay. Huai Shi's eyes lit up. He could only say that there was always an antidote within 100 steps of a poisonous snake. In this world, there was always something to overcome another. After the meal and the dishes were washed, Lao Yang, who was still wearing an apron, finally got what he wanted. He sent the two guys who came to eat for free out the door. Along the way, he glared at Yu Dongri, who was showing off in front of his wife. After sending him to call a taxi, he looked back at Huai Shi. His expression was strange. What's wrong? Huai Shi subconsciously took a step back. His first reaction was that this grandson was angry and wanted to hit someone. Lao Yang stared at him suspiciously for a long time. He pulled him over and asked in a low voice, You didn't offend anyone, did you? Huh? Huai Shi was alert. Then, he heard Lao Yang say, Last night, someone asked me about you and gave me a lot of money. You didn't say anything, right? Huai Shi became nervous. Lao Yang rolled his eyes. Nonsense. If I didn't say anything, am I still human? Then wait. Huai Shi looked up. What did you say? Lao Yang, who had just sold him out, sighed and raised 5 fingers. The person gave 50,000 yuan to buy information about you. Even if I didn't give him, you think he couldn't find out from your school? You brat, think carefully. What shameful things have you done recently? Even though he already knew this guy's character, Huai Shi still couldn't resist the urge to hit him. Then he saw Lao Yang lift his apron and stuff 2 rolls of money into Huai Shi's pocket. Huai Shi touched it and was stunned. It was 2 thick rolls of cash. The thickness was at least 20,000 yuan. This time, it's your brother's fault. I'm sorry. I'm really short on money. If you're angry, you can hit me. He lowered his head and begged for mercy. Take the money and go somewhere else to play for a few days. Don't come back first. I'll ask around and call you when it's over. Huai Shi didn't expect this bastard to have a conscience. For a moment, his heart was filled with mixed feelings. He didn't know what to say. After being cheated so many times, he finally saw some money. He was actually a little touched. Although he wanted to hit him, he felt a little helpless when he thought of his sister-in-law's pale face. Forget it, they had been in the same boat for so many years. If he didn't cheat him, would he watch his wife die? He asked one last question. Who's asking about me? Those people didn't say. They're just pretending. Lao Yang smoked and snorted coldly. Do you think I'm stupid and don't even know how to check the license plate number? I think it's a charity fund or something. The name is scary. I think it's called. He scratched his head for a long time, then slapped the back of his head and finally remembered. Philanthropy and charity. 2 hours later, Huai Shi sat in the armored vehicle and looked at the soldiers around him who were armed to the teeth. He was dumbfounded. What the hell? What's going on? What should I do? The familiar 3 questions of life once again filled his head. Chapter 17. After Yu Dongri called AI Qing to report about the charity, a series of dazzling operations appeared. Within 10 minutes, a black car drove up to him. 2 people politely invited them to get in and took them to the strange agency where he was interrogated last time. By the time he entered the door, the so-called charity and public welfare had already been stripped bare. In a conference room, the middle-aged man who had interrogated Huai Shi last time had an ugly expression on his face and did not say a word. AI Qing was the only one who was flipping through the documents that were still warm in her hands. Soon, she raised her eyes and said, This is a lot of juicy news. It's obvious that this is a shell company used to launder money, but there are so many donors. Many of them are prominent figures in the city. No wonder the Special Affairs Division couldn't find anything after so long. Will there be a leak this time? The middle-aged man coughed and said dryly, The Special Affairs Department is special, The other departments are other departments. It would have been better if you did this earlier. Why did you have to work like a horse for those old men? AI Ching looked up and glanced at him. How many people are involved in this? Quite a lot, the middle-aged man sighed. According to the investigation, this foundation regularly invites some masters to give positive energy lessons to the donors and share the experience of sublimating the soul and maintaining health. Most of the content is unreliable meditation and self-hypnosis. There are also some messy national studies mixed in. No wonder. AI Ching sneered. These are all things that the old leaders like. If this company is really related to this case, I'm afraid a lot of people will be in trouble, right? The Special Affairs Department is the Special Affairs Department. The middle-aged man helplessly repeated what he had just said. There's no need to test anything. We still know what's right and what's wrong. Please rest assured. In the back, Huaisher quietly nudged Yu Dongri with his elbow. Hey, is the inspector so awesome? Yu Dongri rolled his eyes and said in a low voice, the Astronomy Association is a department under the United Nations. Its members are all over the world, and its main purpose is to prevent border corruption and sublimators from committing crimes. You can understand it as long as it has anything to do with sublimators or border relics, she has the right to intervene. After she becomes an official employee, all she has to do is sign a black letter, and she can kill one of your people. What do you think? So powerful. Huaisher was stunned. Even Dongxia is willing. The main members of the governing body of the Astronomical Society are the 5 pillars. Okay? Yu Dongri whispered. This is called taking care of yourself. While the two of them were whispering, AI Ching and the middle-aged man at the front of the conference table seemed to have finished exchanging some conditions. After getting AI Ching's promise not to expand the scope of the attack, the middle-aged man's face looked much better. A voice came from the walkie-talkie on the table. The operatives are in position. The middle-aged man glanced at AI Ching. Pick up the signal. The operation will begin. The huge screen on the wall instantly lit up. Huaisher could vaguely make out that it was from a head-mounted camera. All she could see was a group of people armed from head to toe with guns and cannons in their hands. After receiving the order, the car door opened and a group of people rushed out. This group of anti-terrorist units appeared to have come up with a plan of attack. There was no hesitation in their actions. In less than 2 minutes, they had taken control of the entire parking lot. A group of people rushed to the surveillance room, and a group of people sealed off the inside and outside of the office building. They pulled down the gate, locked it, and pulled up the cordon. Even the signal and optical fiber were completely cut off. Only through the shaking of the helmet's view could Huaisher see the scenery outside the window. F***CK. Is there a need to be so dramatic? This was obviously the busiest place in the center of Xianhai City. The ground several dozen floors below was filled with people. It was the busiest time before the end of the summer break. No one would have thought that there was an ambush happening right above their heads. Just outside the door of the corridor, he quietly set up a broken door stake. After the order was given, there was a loud explosion. Amidst the explosion, before the people inside the room could react, several stun grenades were tossed into the room. After a flash of light and a loud bang, the armed soldiers rushed in and instantly took control of the outer layer of the building. The rest of the people barged in through the door. First, there was a scream, followed by 2 loud gunshots. Then, there was a scream, and finally there was a shrill voice. Don't shoot. I surrender, I surrender. Soon, in the camera's view, a middle-aged man was dragged out. His leg was shot. His face was covered in tears and snot, but he screamed, I surrender. I surrender. I will confess. I will confess everything. It was my master who ordered me to do this. I don't know anything. I really don't know anything. After a moment of chaos, the captain reported to the camera, he is transferring money. All his liquid funds have been transferred overseas. He found a plane ticket to France in the office he was preparing to run. Inside the shocked meeting room, the middle-aged man's expression turned ugly. If there was still a possibility of misunderstanding before, now there was probably something fishy going on. Interrogate him. The middle-aged man almost broke the pen in his hand and ordered hatefully, interrogate him clearly. 10 minutes later, the pen in his hand was really broken. Wang Hai, nicknamed Wang Hai Toad, the toad with dysentery. This was the name of his master. According to the files in the public security system, this guy began to engage in superstition and amass wealth more than 20 years ago. He cheated pensions from old men and old women. He was caught twice and then disappeared. When he appeared again, he became Pastor Wang of the Society of Savior of the Father. His business was huge and out of control, and the person caught in the office was one of his many disciples, Tu Tai, who was in charge of the facade and money laundering. After cleaning up the money his master cheated, he changed it into bearer bonds and valuables. Tu Tai, who graduated from a famous school, joined for the money. He looked down on his master and secretly embezzled a lot of money. As for Wang Hai, he had always kept a lot of secrets from his disciples. The only one he trusted was his eldest disciple, who had always been by his side. Both sides had always been using each other and had common interests, so they lived in harmony. Now that a disaster was about to befall them, Tu Tai decisively gave up his master. As long as there was a question, he would not hide anything. He even took the initiative to confess a lot of things, including the forbidden drug business that his master had been secretly doing all this time and the miracle that he had coincidentally stumbled upon. Miracle? The chief interrogator asked. Yes, miracle. Tu Tai drank a mouthful of water and wiped his cold sweat. Wang Hai has been hiding a box. I don't know what is inside. Every time he leads people to pray, he will hide the box under the pulpit. After opening it, there will be a very nice smell. After smelling it, you will feel refreshed and not be afraid of anything difficult. Those who come to my class don't know. They all think he is some kind of master. Bah, he is an old swindler. I suspect that the forbidden drugs he took out are related to that thing. Box. AI Ching could not help but look at Huaishur. Finally, it was the right match. Huaishur also heaved a sigh of relief. The mastermind had finally been caught, and she no longer had to live in fear. He could finally return to the normal track of life, get promoted, get rich, marry a beautiful woman, and set foot on the peak of life. The people in the conference room were no longer interested in listening to the rest of the words. Only Huaishur was interested in the follow-up. He wanted to ask Tu Tai to explain in detail how his master blessed the female believer. Hey, you even installed a camera? Tell me honestly, where did you put the hard drive? But soon, they received bad news. Wang Hai was going to run away. Tu Tai, who had a keen sense of smell, always knew that this business would not last long. He always paid attention to the news from all sides. When he found that there was a change in his master's account, he felt that something bad was going to happen. With the intention of being prepared, he immediately booked a ticket to France. He planned to go out for 2 days to see what was going on, but it was already too late. Now Wang Hai was holding his last prayer at Laoding town outside of Xianhai. It looked like he was going to run away that night. To prevent any accidents from happening, they had to act as soon as possible. But AI Ching fell into silence. She seemed to have thought of something that was hard to answer. She spaced out like there was no one around her. No matter how the people around her urged her, she did not say anything. After a long time, she raised her head and sighed deeply. Her expression was dark. Indeed, many things have been connected. Yes, all the clues are correct, but something does not feel right. She suddenly turned her head around. Her slender eyes stared at the young man behind her. Is there something that you have not told us? Yes, I have hidden many things like the crow, the book of destiny, the awakening. How can I tell you these things that will cause trouble? No, Huaishur shook his head firmly. I have told you everything that I can. I have told you everything that I cannot tell you. His expression was impassioned, like he was ready to sacrifice himself at any moment, but his heart was very weak. He was afraid that AI Ching would ask Dongri to ask him again. What if the Book of Destiny was summoned? From the crow's tone, it sounded like something very dangerous. Before the binding was undone, Huaishur did not dare expose himself. As if believing his words, AI Ching silently pulled her gaze back. Then let's start the operation immediately. She looked at the middle-aged man. However, to avoid other unexpected situations, even though time is tight before we carry out the plan, It is better for us to find out what this so-called Society of the Savior of God is up to. After all, this is related to relics from the border. No one knows what they are hiding. Furthermore, aren't their ascendants hiding among them? This is all necessary information. The middle-aged man was confused. Miss AI, what do you mean? AI Ching looked behind her and did not say anything. The middle-aged man saw Yu Dongri and immediately understood something. He stood up and shook hands with him, saying warmly, "On behalf of the Special Affairs Division, I would like to thank Mr. Liu for his help and support." What? Yu Dongri was dumbfounded. He did not know what was going on, but he instinctively felt that it was going to be bad. Don't mess around." Before he could finish, AI Ching interrupted him. "It just so happens that other than Yu Dongri, there is also a civilian volunteer who has dealt with them before and is willing to cooperate with us." As she spoke, AI Ching looked at Huaishur, who was gloating behind them. "If the two of them go in first, it will definitely not be a problem." Huaishur's smile froze on his face. He suddenly jumped up and became a tragic recorder. I'm not. We're just going to investigate. With so many people as backup, we won't necessarily die." "You said yourself." Huaishur protested indignantly. "Didn't we agree to be bait? Why do we suddenly sneak behind the enemy's back? Isn't it very common for the client to change their requirements?" AI Ching rested her chin on her palm and looked at him calmly. "At most, I'll give you another 800 yuan in allowance." Huaishur was suddenly angry. "Forget 800 yuan, even if it's 8,000. Before he finished speaking, a beep came from his waist. 8,000 yuan in Alipay. Huaishur froze for a moment, and his expression suddenly stiffened. "Do you think this little money can make me bow my head?" Beep. There was another beep, and the soft female voice reminded him again. 8,000 yuan in Alipay. This is a life-threatening situation. What if I really die? Huaishur's eyes widened. "Don't you even have a pension?" AI Ching retracted her gaze. Her phone shook, and the last transfer was sent out. 700 yuan in Alipay. 700 yuan? Why is the pension only 700 yuan? I gave 16,000 yuan before. Why did I only get so little when I died? Huaishur didn't know whether he should be angry or sad. Should he ask her to give him more? "Little brother, 700 yuan is already a lot." Yu Dongri next to him came over and sighed. "After you get the coupon, you can sell an environmental protection package for the crematorium in the eastern suburbs. You'll also get a box. Remember to give a 5-star rating and send a wreath. Before you order, leave a message to choose the style. After all, you'll be staying for a long time. Choose something you like." 10 minutes later, Huaishur and Yu Dongri were stuffed into the armored car and set off on the road to Laotang town with a tragic mood. When they set off, he inexplicably shivered. It was like falling into an ice cave. Chapter 18. In the carriage that was disguised as a cold chain transport vehicle, Huaishur looked around restlessly. He felt that the people sitting next to him were a little familiar. In the end, he finally realized who they were and pointed at the person opposite him. "Hey, were you the one who injected the needle into my neck last time?" The person opposite him raised his eyes and glanced at him as if he didn't want to talk to him. He didn't even want to throw a dog at him. The cold aura of escorting a death row prisoner made Huaishur particularly uneasy. "Sir, I want to go to the toilet." The soldier opposite him reached out and pointed at a bucket in the corner of the carriage. "I want to take a dump." The soldier opposite him still reached out and pointed at the bucket without moving. It was the same whether it was a large one or a small one. In the shaking carriage, Huaishur's expression twitched. He tried to lean back and stay away from the bucket and prayed that the contents inside would not spill out. Soon, he reacted. "That's not right. Those bastards have seen our faces. How are we going to investigate? I'm afraid we'll be sent to our door as soon as we enter." Yu Dongri next to him took out 2 things that looked like face masks and threw one over. Polymer plastic mask. Ding. Huaishur dubbed in his mind. Received legendary item. Human skin mask X1. He curiously looked at the thing in his hand and immediately became curious. It was fine that he was sent here, but why did Yu Dongri also come here? To reduce my sentence. Lu Dongli crossed his legs and smoked. After this, I'll be free. From now on, I'll be a fish in the sea and a bird in the sky." In the silence, Huaisher looked at him with pity. "You know that if you say something like that in the movie, you'll definitely die in the last mission, right? You've had enough fun. It doesn't matter if you die, but I haven't lived long enough. You said I'm a virgin, but I don't even have any hope of escaping poverty. Isn't that a bit too much? Don't worry." Yu Dongri patted him on the shoulder and gestured with the cigarette in his hand. "The mission is very simple. Sneak in and get information. It's best if you can sneak into the scene and take down that bastard on the spot. If you feel that something is wrong, you will send out the alarm. More than 100 strong men will come in with guns and cannons to save you. What are you afraid of?" Huaisher looked at the strong men around him and felt a little relieved. "Do they have any experience in rescuing hostages? Why didn't you bring any negotiators?" Don't worry." Yu Dongri chuckled. "The Special Affairs Department's sublimated suppression force never negotiates. They always deal with the kidnappers and hostages together. So, have you chosen your box yet? I recommend the one with the red crown crane. It looks grand." Huaisher rolled his eyes. It was completely hopeless. At 4:30 in the afternoon, the car stopped at the back door of a butcher shop in Liaoding Town. Under the shop owner's orders, 2 people disguised as porters walked out of the inner compartment and carried 2 cartons of pork into the shop. The meat was real, the shop was real, and even the car was real. If they checked, they could even find a serial number on the transport company's website. It was just a temporary replacement for the car that was scheduled to deliver the goods today. After delivering the goods, the driver stopped the car on the pretext of eating. After taking Huaisher and Yu Dongri out for a while, he sat in the restaurant and looked at porn. He waved his hand casually, indicating that the 2 people in the distance were free to move. "What do we do?" Huaisher looked around, dumbfounded. Yu Dongri patted him on the shoulder. "Stay here and don't walk around. I'll go buy you an orange tree." Then, he flipped his hair and walked to the street. He grabbed an old lady and chatted with her. It was unknown whether the cowherd's talent was too outstanding or his affinity was too amazing. After a while, they were already calling each other elder sister and younger brother. The old lady was beaming with joy. She took this young man all the way to God knows where. Only Huaisher was left in the same place. He was confused. The 3 questions in life filled his mind. He didn't know what to do. "If you want me to sneak in, you have to tell me how to do it. How can you just leave me here?" Huaisher covered his face. He heard the sound of wings flapping. A crow landed on the wall. Before he had time to be surprised, the crow's voice sounded in his mind. "Don't talk. You're bugged." "What the hell?" Huaisher's eyes widened. "Are you stupid? Little brother, you're being monitored." The crow sighed. "It's not your fault. That little girl's intuition is too sharp. To be honest, your identity is also a bit suspicious. If I knew earlier, I wouldn't have suggested you cooperate with the Astronomy Society. After all, I'm still on the run." "What the hell?" Huaisher's eyes widened. "On the run?" The crow looked at him in confusion. I'm a fugitive wanted by the Astronomy Society. I remember that I'm quite high up on the list. Didn't I tell you? What the hell are you talking about? Now, I'm a traitor, you're a fugitive, and this group of superstitious scammers are all taken care of. I'll be sent to prison, you'll be shot, and those guys will be sentenced. Everyone will have a bright future. Don't worry, she's not sure yet. Otherwise, she wouldn't have let you out to make you give yourself away. Listen to me. You'll be fine this time." Huaisher rolled his eyes. He had completely lost hope in his teammates. "Please, I beg you, let me play solo." He sighed. He didn't want to talk to this stupid bird anymore. He got up and walked down the street. As far as he could see, it was a normal scene. It was filled with a sense of decay. The streets were filled with old people. There were very few young people walking around. They had probably gone out to work. It was understandable. After all, Xianhai's economic situation was not good recently. After all, the last time it was considered a metropolis was 70 or 80 years ago. It was a miracle that it remained on the map after so long. Young people with some ambition probably want to work in Yanjing, Jinling, or Yangzhou. According to rumors, the new cabinet wanted to develop the coastal economy, but the environment was not as good as the inland, right? At this point, Huaishir simply threw all thoughts of the undercover mission to the back of her mind and strolled around the streets with her hands in her hands. The afternoon sun shone down on the ground, making people feel warm and comfortable. In a trance, Huaishir seemed to see the whole town shake like a reflection in the water. Countless shadows appeared in the sky, but soon, the strange illusion disappeared and everything returned to normal. All that was left was cold sweat and chills. There was something wrong with this place, right? The target has started to move. Following the report from the surveillance, inside the giant truck outside the town, inside the temporary command center, everyone was shocked. They put on their earphones and looked at the screen. On the screen, other than the surveillance cameras that were connected to the town, the enlarged image in the middle was Huaishir, who was walking around with nothing to do. In a long silence, everyone watched as Huaishir wandered around like a bored idler. No matter how they looked at it, it didn't look like he was undercover. He was shivering like he had run into a ghost. Compared to Lu Dongli, who was like a fish in water and had already entered the group of old female friends, Huaishir was simply slacking off. There was nothing suspicious about him at all. Just as everyone was speechless, another report came from the front. The target has started to... Before the voice could finish, it stopped abruptly. In the video, Huaishir ran to a convenience store and used her undercover salary to buy a pack of cigarettes and a lighter. She even splurged and bought a 5 yuan ice cream. Then, he squatted on the steps under the sun and started to walk around. The smell of salted fish with 900% salinity hit them in the face. This guy was hopeless, right? AI Ching's calm expression couldn't help but twitch. She began to reflect from the bottom of her heart. Was there something wrong with this salted fish hiding something from her? How did the enthusiastic and lively child from back then become like this in just a few years? Could it be that the chainsaw of time was too uncanny? Seeing Huaishir's limited time, the people in the command center didn't know what to say. Some people looked at AI Ching and wanted to ask if they should urge her, but AI Ching didn't say anything from beginning to end. Forget it. It didn't matter whether he was there or not. There were a lot of things to do now. Not only did they have to investigate the interpersonal relationships in Laodang Town in just a few hours, but they also had to check the surveillance footage to see if there were any clues. The depth detector had already entered the site and was being installed closely. They didn't have time to waste on salted fish. In the midst of the bustle, Huaishir's eavesdropping device sounded from afar. "Young man, yes, you. Come over here." In the image, Huaishir was called over by a group of old men pushing a trolley. "Yes, it's you. Whose kid is this? Come over and help." Huaishir was stunned for a long time. She held the remaining wooden stick in her hand and seemed to finally remember her undercover job. She reluctantly went to help the group of old men unload the cart. It took her a lot of effort to get the cart into a yard near the border. Then, she was ordered to move a pile of broken gongs, drums, and costumes down from the cart and put them away in different categories. There seemed to be some sort of meeting going on in the courtyard. A group of dark-skinned old men were sitting on the ground happily talking about something. There were also people sitting around the table playing cards. In the corner, there was a pot of boiling water. All that was missing was a few tables set up a banquet. There seemed to be food to eat. Huaishir's eyes lit up. He retracted the half of his foot that had stepped out. It was impossible for him to be undercover. It was impossible for him to be undercover in this lifetime. He might as well eat peacefully. He didn't ask for more meat, as long as there was enough rice. As a result, Huaishir waited for a long time, but there was no signal for the cafeteria to open. He saw the 7 or 8 old men sitting on the ground pick up the broken gongs, pipa, and swona, and began to play some tune of 2-people rotation. When he found that there was an unfamiliar audience looking at him, the old man playing the swona in the middle became more and more energetic. After playing for a long time, he proudly waved the instrument in his hand at Huaishir. Did he mean to say, "Are you looking at me? You should be jealous." Huaishir's heart did not waver. He clapped his hands dryly and even wanted to laugh a little. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't bring anything to eat today, he would have let this old man see what an 8th grade ABRSM performance was like. Not to mention, after combining it with meditation, his cello's appeal was unbelievably strong. If he put in a little more effort, your cow would cry. Unexpectedly, the group of old men became more energetic. They played one tune after another at Huaishur. The saliva in the Suona flew a few meters away. He didn't know what kind of black technology they used to connect to a subwoofer, but Huaishur's back molars were almost shaken out. After they finished, they even raised their chin at Huaishur provocatively. "Young man, how about a piece?" "Okay, I'll show you what I've got today." Huaishur curled his lips. It seemed that reality didn't allow him to keep a low profile anymore. He casually rummaged through the pile of broken instruments and found an eru that could be played. He crossed his legs and didn't care about keeping a low profile anymore. The first thing he did was to play a remix of Horse Race, Moon Reflection, Bach a Cappella, Above the Moon, and Pomp and Circumstance. Due to the limited equipment, there were many parts that were out of tune. Huaishur could only imitate that pervert Paganini and try to play a tune with one string. However, she did not expect that after she finished playing, she would open her eyes and see a bunch of black heads in front of her. The group of old men who were playing cards, chatting, smoking, and playing the piano had gathered together at some point in time. They were pointing at him with a solemn and serious expression. "It's over." Huaishur's heart tightened. Could it be that I've been exposed? A few old men were talking to each other. The one in the middle looked to Huaishur with a puzzled expression. Where did this young man come from? Why haven't I seen him before? I'm new. I'm working here. Huaishur subconsciously got up and wanted to run. I'm leaving, don't worry." The old man grabbed Huaishur's shoulder and laughed happily. It was as if he was trapped in the toilet and someone came to give him toilet paper. That bastardly louse didn't come. Today, our gospel class is short of someone who can play the eru. Come with us to the church performance tonight. I'll give you 40 yuan per performance, including dinner. Okay? Church? Art performance? Wait a minute. How did he get inside so quickly? Huaishur was dumbfounded. He subconsciously wanted to refuse, but when he remembered that he was still under surveillance, he could only grit his teeth and nod. Okay. He paused for a moment and made a condition. "But I have to eat first." Feeling the sudden chill at the back of his head, Huaishur seemed to be able to imagine the scene of death crawling on his back with a grin. However, what did this have to do with him being a ruthless negative energy production machine? Let's talk about going on the road after I'm full. Chapter 19. An hour later, the church was already full of people. Old men and women from various towns and villages called each other friends. In a joyous atmosphere, they talked about their sons and daughters who worked outside and the eggs they bought yesterday. There were also free melon seeds and fruits distributed. Everyone had 3 yellow cakes and a few bottles of mineral water. In the midst of the chaos, the curtain on the podium was still hanging down. The backstage was in full swing. The gospel class, which was preparing for the cultural performance, was confirming the program. In the corner, the teenager was lying on the ground like a dead dog. Huaishur's face was pale. He was about to vomit and shivered. The bone-chilling cold and invisible weight were constantly applied to his back. For the first time, he felt such a terrible weight of death. He didn't dare to imagine how terrible the death was to have such a heavy premonition. He leaned on the bucket and vomited all the steamed buns and braised pork that he had just stuffed into his stomach. His tears and snot were about to come out. He hated this strange skill of his. Although he was about to die, Huaishur unexpectedly didn't feel afraid. He only felt nauseous, as if he had eaten something bad. His stomach was bloated. He wiped his tears and pulled the old man who played the pipa. "Uncle, if I die backstage, can it be counted as a work injury?" The old man jumped a few steps away, full of vigilance. "Young man, don't blackmail people. It was fine before the meal. I have seen the world. If it was a few years ago, we might have met near the front of a car. If you want to mess around, believe it or not, I will lie on the ground and blackmail you to hit people." Yes. The old man who played the Suona next to him echoed. "I can testify. I saw it clearly." "Young man, you hit people when you didn't like it." Huaishur was about to give up. Where the F***CK did this group of old men with all the 5 poisons come from? They were so skilled at blackmailing people. Okay, get ready." Another foreman came from the front and shouted. He pointed at Huaishur and shouted, Can you still play? If you can't, we don't pay here. Young people nowadays have a bad conscience. Yes, yes. Huaisher picked up the Eru with tears in his eyes. Where's the score? Where is it? Why do we need a score? We don't have enough time, so we have to cancel our scene. Now, let's play the accompaniment for the gospel duo turn. We just need to follow the tune and create a festive atmosphere. The old man waved his hand and muttered, "It's really a loss to give him 40 yuan. If I had known, I would have given him 20 yuan." Huaisher was speechless. Just as he sat down with a group of old men at the front desk, he heard someone announce, "Next, please enjoy the gospel yanga brought to you by Louding Town's Arts Club." The audience applauded enthusiastically. Only Huaisher could not help but curse in his heart. What the hell is that lunatic called Wang Hai doing? Holding a sermon like the Diyun Society, and they even need people to warm up the atmosphere. Why are they so ostentatious? Why don't they go and be a little fresh meat? Before he had the time to think further, a row of old ladies dressed in festive floral clothes came up to the stage from backstage. They gathered around a person and chatted about the postures and techniques of square dancing. "Sisters, remember, the rhythm here is not dong cha-cha, but dong cha-cha." The leader smiled and even stroked her hair in a showy manner. She looked back and smiled flirtatiously. Then she froze on the spot, looking at Huaisher. Huaisher was also looking at her, dumbfounded. Damn, why is it you? Huaisher was just thinking about how to get in touch with this guy. She didn't expect that before she could even get in touch with him, the gospel twosome, with the cowherd Lu Dongli leading the dance and the trader Huaisher playing the piano, had already started their performance. Joy and music blossomed. As the two of them looked at each other with complicated expressions, Huaisher opened his mouth silently. "Where's my orange tree? I haven't bought it yet. Have you eaten?" "No, I've eaten." Huaisher patted his stomach. "There's white bread and red braised pork. Are you jealous?" F***CK. Yu Dongri suddenly wanted to curse, but the curtain at the front stage had been opened. He could only force a warm smile and dance with the old men in the country disco. Just in front of Yu Dongri, the old sister who was the first to be stopped by him twisted a floral handkerchief and sang, "Entering God's home, sitting beside God. The sweetness is better than our mothers. Hallelujah to heaven." Huaisher could not help but laugh. Beep. The phone in his pocket vibrated. A text message had been sent. He took out his phone with one hand and saw AI Ching's number on screen, and the content of the text message. "Retreat immediately. Close." At that moment, the aura of death that was far stronger than usual surged and almost drowned Huaisher. 10 minutes ago, in the temporary command center, AI Ching's expression was gloomy. Soul radiation recording tape completed. Normal. Depth index 0. 17. Normal. Border erosion rate is 0. 3%. Normal. 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 All the observation data was normal. But for some reason, her expression became more and more unsightly until finally, there was a trace of anger. "What's wrong?" the middle-aged man asked. "Something's wrong." AI Ching's slender fingers clenched the armrest of the wheelchair. Her eyes were gloomy. "There's definitely something wrong." While everyone was still in a state of shock, she reached out and took out the phone from the pocket of the wheelchair. She directly opened the back case and pulled out the red plug that looked like a phone card. In the silence, the middle-aged man was stunned and stood up subconsciously. "Are you crazy?" Every inspector's phone was a special model provided by the Astronomy Society. Not to mention the strong signal and power, the internal application and data were also reasonable. The most important and crucial thing was the red highest alert on the back of the phone. Only when an inspector confirmed that a matter was beyond his ability and would bring about a B-level border hazard or above would he have the authority to activate this function. Whether it was a fire beacon or a life-saving talisman, few inspectors would choose to use it. Once this function was activated, the signal would directly connect to the United Nations Astronomy Society's direct authority, the Special Situation Countermeasures Room of the administration. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it could reach the heavens. If the situation was serious, it would even alarm the Group of 10 committee. If AI Ching was an official prosecutor, she could even mobilize an A-level sacred corps or directly mobilize the manpower of all the ascendants in the entire East China Sea region. Of course, there was a price to pay for such an exaggeration. If someone found out that she was playing the wolf, the consequences would be obvious. But the most important thing for everyone present was that once the matter was reported to the Astronomy Society, all the deals and guarantees made to cover up the matter would naturally come to nothing. Flipping the table right before victory? What was this woman trying to do? She was really crazy. It was just a small matter involving relics at the border. Why did she have to directly report it to the administration? It was like the leaders of 2 counties directly calling the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection after a disagreement. Wasn't she making a mountain out of a molehill? Moreover, there was no evidence or sign at all, nor was there any sign that something was wrong. Maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. But compared to the unexpected situation, I'd rather take a gamble. AI Ching turned her phone in her hand. Once she made the decision, her expression calmed down again without any anxiety. Even if the higher-ups doubted her ability, she would accept it. The uneasy premonition that was so strong that it could drive people crazy quickly disappeared as if it was an illusion. Only the cold sweat that was gradually drying under her clothes could show how much she had struggled to make this ridiculous decision. She looked at the phone screen and sneered mockingly. She laughed at herself. She was only 2 months away from becoming an official, but now it was hard to say. If it turned out to be a false report, being stripped of her position as inspector would be a light punishment. After all, the Special Situation Countermeasures Room was increasingly short on manpower. They would never allow such a squandering of the Astronomy Society's resources to happen. After a few seconds, the phone screen lit up. There was no need to connect. A faint light was projected on the screen and intertwined into an illusory phantom in the air. A man in a suit that looked like a telephone operator had no confusion or panic on his face. He calmly examined the girl in front of him. Number T9631, probationary inspector of the Dongxia branch in Xianhai. He said, "No depth warning detected, no signs of border erosion detected, no signs of high-level stigmata activity detected. Please submit a report and application." Following the regulations of the law of the 12 copper tables, as a probationary inspector, I apply for the assistance of Article 9 of the Border Countermeasures Ordinance and physical blockade of the area within 10 kilometers of Laodang Town in Xianhai of the Republic of Dongxia in Asia. Please execute immediately. Application in confirmation dash. The printer next to the man in the suit quickly spat out a long list of documents. After glancing at it, he picked up the stamp next to him and stamped it. Application approved. Satellite orbit adjustment begins. It is expected to be in place in 3 minutes. Laodang Town blockade execution order has been issued. Waiting for processing. Article 9 of the Border Countermeasures Ordinance has been loaded. After completing all the procedures in a mechanical manner, the man in a suit with serial number 0075 nodded in the end. Everything is for the world. The communication was cut off. In the silence where everyone was stunned, a roar that sounded like an earthquake came from afar. In the sky, tens of thousands of kilometers away, in the pitch-black darkness of the universe, the enormous satellite array that was floating in the orbit of space spurted out gas, slowly and precisely adjusting its angle, reflecting the insignificant things such as the clouds, the land, the cities, and the dust down below. In the Greenwich Observatory in Old London, on the 6th underground floor, the huge difference engine roared and slowly spat out a tin foil tape that was full of holes. The secretary waiting by the side carefully cut it out and rolled it into a bearing. The process was recorded and recorded. Finally, it was placed into an empty cylinder and sent into the vacuum mail pipe next to it. Under the vacuum, the cylinder sank thousands of meters underground and landed in the corner of the busy hall. The man who was smoking sat on the chair and listened to music. He opened the cylinder with one hand and opened the scroll with the other. He stomped on the floor, tossed the cigarette butt to the side, and walked to the center of the hall. There were people coming and going in the incredibly huge hall, but the floor was uneven. Many places were even filled with water. But looking down from above, one could see its true appearance. It was a three-dimensional map that was huge enough to record all the topography in the world. The man who was smoking passed by his colleagues at work and found the indicated position according to the code. He took out a row of markers from his pocket and chose the silver-gray one. He drew a circle. Closed circle number C987778762 is completed. Archiving. So, thousands of miles away, on another continent separated by mountains and seas, dragons and snakes rose up. Under the illumination of the sun and moon at dusk, the soil outside Old Tang Town seemed to be boiling. In the roar of the friction between iron and stone, blazing flames emerged from it, turning the soil into lava. But then, iron light emerged from the lava. Multiplication. Like a tree growing, the steel grew upward inch by inch, extending along the path of the invisible pen. The rapidly cooling surface emitted the light of black iron, and countless scale-like sharp pieces of iron blossomed from it. In 10 seconds, the entire Old Tang Town was sealed in the iron fence that was hundreds of meters high. Then, the color of the sky changed from dim and mottled to pitch black. Scene stripping began. At that moment, there was a sigh. There was a slender, white hand reaching out from the church. It grasped the sky and the earth. There was a violent explosion in the distance. Chapter 20. Leave. Huaishir looked at Yu Dongri in astonishment. Even in the middle of his performance, Yu Dongri was still smiling charmingly and winking at the old aunties below the stage. Even when he was reading a text message on his phone, he was still so charming. Then, the smile on his face stiffened. In the midst of the festive Yanko, his face turned pale. Ignoring the fact that he was still performing, he turned around and pulled Huaishir away. At first, he was jogging, but later, he was running in big strides. Nonsense, of course we're leaving. What are we going to do? Stay here for the new year? Yu Dongri's face was ashen. He muttered about that stinky woman and how she had no conscience. He pushed away the people in front of him, ignoring the commotion he caused behind him, and went straight to the back door to push it open. The door moved and stopped abruptly. It was locked. From the outside. Damn it, take the front door. Yu Dongri angrily took out a gun from his pocket and aimed at the two people behind him. Go away. Go away. Go away. Bang. Bang. The bullet hit the wall and wedged into the bricks, causing powder to fly everywhere. But after realizing that the thing in Yu Dongri's hand was not a toy, those people screamed and turned around to escape. Is that necessary? Huaishir was stunned. At this time, his phone vibrated again. It was a text message from AI Ching. Close 4-inch, do you know what this means? Yu Dongri's face was ashen. He pointed to the subtitles on the phone screen. Closed means a blockade. This is the most common way the Astronomical Society uses to seal dangerous objects. The 4 behind is a countdown. There are 4 minutes left. After 4 minutes, the entire area will be physically isolated. At that time, we will be locked in a cage with the thing they want to seal. This was the last chance AI Ching gave them. The plan was canceled. There was no time for you to evacuate. Run as far as you can. Is it that vicious? Huaishir's face was so scared that it turned transparent. Suddenly, he felt dizzy and his vision turned black. He stumbled behind Yu Dongri and passed through the long corridor. Because he walked too far, he bumped into the workers who were moving things. Sorry. Huaishir scrambled to get up and wanted to help him pack up, but there was no time at all. He repeatedly begged for mercy, turned around, and ran with Yu Dongri. The dull man didn't say anything. He just glanced at Huaishir and mechanically cleaned up the things on the ground. However, the moment he raised his head, Huaishir saw on that ordinary face, behind the eyes, there seemed to be a golden red shadow slowly swimming past. They were like goldfish in a water tank. Huaishir thought inexplicably. 5 minutes ago. Cancel the rest of the program. In the lounge, Wang Hai paced back and forth restlessly, waiting for the beginning of the sermon. But for some reason, he had a bad feeling in his heart. All the escape routes had been arranged. As long as he finished this job, he would immediately leave, but he still couldn't hide the panic in his heart. Something was not right. He subconsciously gnawed on his fingers, once again gnawing on the healed flesh. The uneasiness in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Start the sermon immediately. He finally couldn't wait any longer. He suddenly stomped his feet, picked up the box on the table, and told his disciple, "Don't perform those boring programs. Anyway, this time draw, cleanly, no need to warm up." After his disciple left in a hurry, he tried to suppress the panic in his heart and put on the kind smile that had long become muscle memory. But suddenly, he felt a vibration in his pocket. It was his phone. It was a strange text message from an unknown number, but the content of the message made his face turn pale. Tutai was arrested. "The people from the astronomy club are here. Run, Wang Hai, you have 1 minute." Instantly, the bone-piercing chill almost made him scream. Even though he didn't know who the person who sent the message was and how they knew this number that only a few of his confidants knew, he didn't have time to care about that anymore. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. Run. He had to leave now. He couldn't stay in Xin High any longer. In the intense fear that almost made him scream, he hugged the box, pushed out the door from the lounge, and rushed forward like crazy. He kicked the door open, grabbed the key, and rushed in the direction of the back door. Just as he turned the corner, he heard a voice in front of him. "Little brother, why are you leaving already? Didn't we have a good talk?" The old Annie, who was the first to be hit on by Yu Dongri, grabbed Yu Dongri's arm passionately and urged him to stay. "After the sermon is over, Big Sister will make you some noodles." "No, Big Sister, I have something urgent to do. I really have something urgent to do." Yu Dongri struggled hard and raised his head. He saw Wang Hai. Wang Hai also saw him. As if looking at each other across an abyss, the two people's expressions froze. The next moment, determination and viciousness flashed across their faces. Then there was the sound of gunfire. It came from behind Yu Dongri. In the young man's hand, the muzzle of the gun was smoking. It was Huaishir. At that moment, he grabbed the gun from behind Yu Dongri, aimed, and fired. But he was not aiming at Wang Hai, but at the Big Sister next to Yu Dongri. She wants to kill someone. In the strong stimulation brought by the premonition of death, Huaishir could feel the murderous intent from this seemingly friendly old auntie. The murderous intent was enough to tear himself and Yu Dongri into pieces. In the hasty firing, Huaishir almost lost his grip. The bullet that was aimed at the old Annie's body was deflected to the grandma's side. It only hit her hand that was holding Yu Dongri. It opened a large hole in her wrist and almost killed Yu Dongri. Silence came. Blood splattered. Yu Dongri subconsciously dodged and retreated. He saw the old hand that was originally holding him gradually turn into the color of steel, and sharp iron-gray fingernails extended from the fingertips. As the flesh slowly healed, a deformed bullet was squeezed out of the wound. Was it seen through? The old lady slowly raised her head. Her old face gradually distorted, and her pupils turned into the familiar blood-red color. Her face gradually turned into the appearance of a beast, and she smiled at them hungrily. "Damn it, Yu Dongri screamed. Closed 3. 5. There were 3 minutes and 30 seconds left before the closure of Laodang. The situation began to slide in the worst direction. Not only the Dongsha football team, but also Huaishir and the others did not have much time left. It was naturally impossible for everyone to sit down and drink tea and chat in such an awkward situation under such an abrupt and awkward situation. Yu Dongri was the fastest to react. In other words, this coquettish guy was prepared to show off his so-called beautiful face to others 24/7. "What are you looking at?" After a loud shout, who subconsciously looked over, stiffened in place. Yu Dongri grabbed the pistol that almost numbed Huaishir's claws and aimed at his old sister and fired wildly. Of course, the lovey-dovey village love scene just now disappeared in the gunfire. In the blink of an eye, an entire magazine was emptied. But without the shooting of a large-caliber lethal weapon, the lethality of a pistol was very little against a sublimator who had entered the 3rd stage and whose internal organs had begun to transform into ether. The old lady had already closed her eyes. The situation of offense and defense had reversed. Huaisha did not just stand there. He summoned his courage, rolled up his sleeves, and rushed straight to Wang Hai. He suddenly flew up and kicked. "Leave the box." Wang Hai, who was about to turn around and run away, was kicked in the waist by him. His entire body flew out and landed on the ground. However, he still held the box tightly in his arms and didn't let go. Then, Huaisha pounced on him and performed a set of military boxing on his old face. Because he was not sure if Wang Hai had any strange abilities, he did not hold back at all. He hit his own fingers until they hurt. Poor Wang Hai was valued by the lords only because of his talent in preaching. Even when he went out to cheat, he relied on his own mouth. When had he ever fought with someone so ugly? He was just an ordinary person. Now, the Savior Society's #1 big shot, the old lady Ya, was entangled with Yu Dongri. The disciples who were supposed to be his bodyguards did not have time to arrive. Today, Huaisha's military boxing was unforeseen. Huaisha performed half a set of military boxing moves and felt extremely comfortable all over. Every pore on her body felt refreshed. When she saw that the old man was beaten to the point where he couldn't even fight back, she immediately relaxed a lot. Then, she gnashed her teeth even more angrily. "You're the one who found someone to mess with me, aren't you? I told you to silence me. I told you to commit crimes. I told you to sell drugs. I told you to let society down. Where did this little bastard come from? Go to hell." Wang Hai was completely enraged. He waved his arms wildly. Huaisha felt a pain in his arm. Then, a bloody mark burst out from under his torn clothes. He was cut by a knife. While Huaisha was not paying attention, Wang Hai pulled out the dagger from his shoe. Then, Wang Hai seized the opportunity and held the box in his arms. He suddenly opened the lid and waved it at Huaisha. Suddenly, a mist-like powder flew out and landed on Huaisha's face. The effect of that damn thing was amazing. As soon as he inhaled it, Huaisha's body went soft. A mess of illusions appeared in his mind. He felt so good that it was as if he was on cloud 9. Then, he knew that he had fallen into the old woman's trap. "Mother Kerr, you suck too." He grabbed Wang Hai's collar, and with a grab of his hand, he refined a handful of ash and stuffed it on Wang Hai's face without thinking, rubbing it fiercely. Wang Hai's old face suddenly turned red. Snot and tears flowed down his face. He wailed like a ghost and howled like a wolf. Huaisha took advantage of the free time to stuff some into his mouth. Suddenly, the ecstasy in his heart was diluted by the sudden sadness. His originally floating and inflated consciousness quickly withered under the terrible effect of the soul swill. The two people were alternating between joy and sadness. They laughed wildly with tears and snot on their faces. They were entangled together like an internal conflict in a mental hospital. It could be said that they met their match, but the time they spent pecking each other was so short. From the beginning until now, it had only been 25 seconds. Then, the dizzy illusion was awakened by a loud noise. It came from behind them. In just 20 seconds, Yu Dongri's face had been dyed red with blood. The custom-made suit on his body had completely turned into a beggar's suit. A deep wound in front of his chest almost cut his abdomen open. The pistol was already in the hand of Qi, but it was casually thrown aside. For him, it was a hellish 25 seconds. Even if Qi closed her eyes, she could easily beat him. And at the moment when he fell back, he finally found an opportunity. From the hidden holster under his suit, he pulled out the long-prepared trump card and aimed at the old woman in the air. It was a short-barreled shotgun that was cut down again. This was a good thing that he specially prepared for Qi. The opportunity was fleeting. There were only 2 bullets, and the opportunity was only for a moment. After this moment, Qi, who was amazingly agile, would launch her skill, glide in the air, take the aim of the gun, and then directly tear off one of his arms. But now, the outcome had been decided. Chapter 21. First, there was a crack, and then a bang. A rain of metal gushed out from the barrel, and in the blink of an eye, the old woman was sent flying and smashed into the wall. For a moment, she spurted out a large amount of blood like a sieve. But Yu Dongri's movements did not stop. He pulled the bolt of the shotgun in his hand and loaded the special bullet that targeted sublimators. Then, he closed in on her and pulled the trigger. Boom! The old woman, whose face was beyond recognition and had almost turned into a pile of rotten meat, slid down the wall. Her limbs twitched as if she still wanted to struggle. After being shot twice by the shotgun at such a close range, she was still alive. But she did not have long to live. Yu Dongri pried open the butt of the shotgun, took out 2 bullets from his pocket, and stuffed them in. Then, he aimed and fired 2 more times, and then 2 more times, until the barrel of the shotgun was burning red. The pile of rotten meat on the ground finally stopped moving completely. Only the old face, which had been torn apart by steel, still maintained the ferocity and fear that did not dissipate in time. Yu Dongri did not have time to catch his breath. He turned around and walked toward the 2 people who were fighting in front of him. He raised a hot barrel and hit the back of Wang Hai's head with the butt of the shotgun. The old man's eyes rolled back, and he fainted, leaving Huaisha lying on the ground, gasping for breath. He did not even wipe off his tears and snot. At that moment, Huaisha saw that Yu Dongri's pupils had unknowingly turned into polychoria. 50 seconds. The battle was over. Old Pond closure countdown. 2. 40-inch take it. Let's go. We have to at least leave the church. Yu Dongri picked up his pistol from the ground and threw it to him. He also gave him a magazine. Then he turned around, picked up the box, and quickly retreated. Huaisha got up from the ground, gasping violently, and staggered behind him. Then he saw the box under Wang Hai's ribs. That box, that familiar box, he saw it again. It was the box that he had picked up. Huaisha was sure that the box should have been his. Yes, it should have been his. Did Yu Dongri think that everything would be over after he took his things? He was furious. He raised the pistol in his hand, aimed it at Yu Dongri's back, and pulled the trigger. Bang! The sound of gunfire dissipated, and blood spurted out. Yu Dongri's body suddenly shook, and he fell to the ground. He stiffly turned his head and looked at the youth behind him in disbelief, that distorted and stiff face. After firing the gun, Huaisha was also stunned. She lowered her head in a daze and looked at the smoking barrel in her hand. What was going on? What did I do? Why would I snatch that box? And why am I here? Didn't he feel the threat of death the moment he entered this place? Didn't he feel the shadow of death getting thicker and thicker? Why did I come to church? Why did I shoot at old Lou? Also, what am I doing? His thoughts became a mess in an instant. Then he felt a strong wave of nausea. His stomach churned, and he suddenly bent down and vomited. Then he felt that he had vomited something out. It fell into the filth on the ground. It was a goldfish that seemed to be alive and kicking. Goldfish? Goldfish again? The person who passed by just now also had goldfish in his eyes. And at the very beginning, before the corpse died, it also vomited goldfish. So, what's the stress period? It's been less than 6 hours, and there's a rejection reaction. Behind him, a strange hoarse voice sighed. Even the second-generation goldfish can resist. No wonder the first 3 generations of goldfish can't parasitize. What bad luck. Otherwise, the box would have been in our hands long ago. Why would we go through so much trouble? Following the hoarse sigh, the air slowly distorted. A thin figure walked out of the empty air, revealing a dark trench coat and a cold and indifferent face. A pair of blood-red gloves, and a fish tank in his right hand. There were a few slender goldfish swimming slowly in the small fish tank. Green sun. In the pool of blood, Yu Dongri saw the green ring emblem on the back of his hand and finally reacted. He tried to raise the muzzle. Why sure run? The red glove looked down at him and shook his head in pity. You can't even take care of yourself. How can you care about other things? The chill of death suddenly appeared. Then, gunshots sounded from behind Huaisha. There was a bang, and then another bang. One shot was for Yu Dongri, and one shot was for Huaisha himself. Yu Dongri twitched, and then there was no more sound. Huaisha looked down stiffly and saw the blood gradually coming out of his chest. There was also a hole, as if someone had hit his back with a sledgehammer. It hurt like hell. He fell to his knees and wept uncontrollably. But when he looked back and saw the person who shot him, the hoarse cry of pain froze in his throat. Lao Yang? The stooped man, with a hollow expression, raised his head and looked at him. There seemed to be traces of a smile on his face, which had a Philistine smile all year round. Behind the pair of eyes, a goldfish swam around happily. It was as if he was in his own fish tank. Under Huaishi's stunned gaze, he bent down, picked up the box, stepped on the blood, and stood behind the man, waiting for orders. Go and lock the front door, and then prepare for the ceremony. After waiting for so long, there has to be some value. The stranger ordered, and Lao Yang turned and left. He didn't even look back at Huaishi. Are you acquaintances? The stranger looked down at Huaishi and smiled jokingly. He owed a lot of money for others, and can only use himself to pay off the debt. Don't blame him, and don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame your bad luck. In a trance and confusion, Huaishi suddenly understood something. Although he was so angry that he felt like he was going crazy, he couldn't help but want to laugh. He laughed at himself for struggling like a worm in a net for so long. Everything was destined. From the beginning, as early as when he received Lao Yang's phone call, he happily carried the piano case to the brothel to apply for a job. He had already embarked on the road of death. He would arrive at the predetermined location and then angrily call Lao Yang when he went out to report his location and information. Finally, he would take the shortcut home and find a corpse, a box, and a goldfish in the alley. That goldfish should have been swimming happily in his head. He had escaped a disaster by accident, but the mastermind behind the scenes had turned him back on the original track and ushered in the predetermined ending. Just like what this person said, his luck seemed to have never been good. He always inexplicably encountered inexplicable things, and then his messy life became a mess. He became poorer and poorer, more and more miserable, and more depressed, until now. He was like a headless fly plunging into a dead end, ushering in the end. Mother asterisk her why. Huaisher could no longer endure the intense pain and vomited blood. Tears and snot flowed out of her eyes. I just want to live a good life. I want to earn some money so that I can live a better life. I want to find a decent job. Even if I have to work like a horse, I don't care. I just want to find someone I like to marry and have a family that won't despise me. Is that wrong? Why is this? Why can't you asterisk king let me go? The man with the red gloves was silent. After a long time, he sighed softly. For a better world, there are always many things we can't do. He took out a gun from his pocket and pointed it at the boy's face. Sorry, your sacrifice is for a greater value. He pulled the trigger. Bang! The bullet was bounced off. It was covered by a faint layer of light. The red gloves were stunned. Desperate situation protection? He looked at the faint light shrouding the boy in astonishment. That woman gave her life-saving talisman to you? Are you really her old flame? This was the emergency protection given by the Astronomy Association to every supervisor. It was a life-saving talisman in the literal sense. Once a fatal attack was encountered, it would automatically activate and save a user's life in the worst case, waiting for rescue within 3 minutes. Unless it was forcibly attacked by a stage for Sacred Mark or above, it was impossible to break the barrier. Forget it. He put away the gun and glanced mockingly at Huaishi's chest. Even if he didn't kill him, this guy would bleed to death. Time was precious now, and he was only one step away. He didn't have time to waste on him anymore. He turned and walked to the auditorium. It could be said that the plan had turned out to be completely out of his expectations. Although the action against the Savior Society was a spur-of-the-moment idea after seeing the box, it had been carefully planned. In order to avoid triggering the vigilance and detection of the group of gods behind Wang Hai, he had to start with ordinary people. He used his soul, the power of the sneering fish tank, to control an internal strife. He also used Lao Yang's hand to arrange for the completely unrelated Huaishi to complete the last step of the transfer. But he didn't expect that Huaishi was a hidden sublimator in the stress period. He was resistant to the third-generation fry derived from the parasites, causing the complete failure of the parasitism and the plan to be changed beyond recognition. Fortunately, he had successfully hidden himself behind the scenes, And with the great pressure from sky culture, the purified people behind Wang Hai did not sense anything unusual. Those people who only thought about saving their master were out-and-out lunatics and had no sense of reason at all. However, since he couldn't complete the plan secretly, he had to change the method. To him, as long as the final outcome didn't cause any problems, it didn't matter if he changed the process. Since he had attracted the attention of the Astronomy Association, then he might as well make a big deal out of it. He kicked the door open and casually fired 2 shots, killing an old man who wanted to pounce on him. He walked through the chaotic and screaming crowd and walked to the podium. The front and back doors had been sealed. He didn't know how much time he had left, but it was enough to complete the final descent. However, using the cauldron of reincarnation as a drug, did the pure people's god eat their subordinates' brains as well? He looked down at the box in front of him and couldn't help but sneer. This kind of container-type relic excavated from the ruins of the 7th level of hell was the best container for Sapphira. Although it was easy to convert the excited Sapphira of the fanatics into substances, it was likely that even Wang Hai, who was given this box, didn't know what it was in his hands. It wasn't just the group of believers he tricked that was used as a sacrifice, but even himself. As long as there was enough Sapphira, it was enough to make the embryo of an ancient spirit descend into existence. Once the ranch master's emissary used it to descend, it was likely that all the living things in sight would become its meal. Although what he was about to do wasn't much better. Just treat it as waste. He glanced at the believers who were being used as a source of Sapphira. He opened the box and took out a test tube from his bosom. Facing the dim light of the church, he looked at the flesh and blood inside. "Let's begin," he softly muttered, "lay down an insignificant part of our great cause." Chapter 22. The test tube in the red glove's hand seemed to contain a broken limb. The skin seemed to be made of some kind of metal, and the bones seemed to be made of crystal. It was a finger. Without a doubt, it had been taken from a sage's corpse. It was more than enough to be used as a seed for the sage insignia or as a basis for descending. With so much origin substance, it should be enough for initial development, right? The red glove laughed, then suddenly smashed the test tube in the box. In the blink of an eye, countless shards of glass flew out, then dissipated into the air. They weren't physical in the first place. The entire test tube was a container made of myriad dissolving agent, and its purpose was to tightly isolate the inside from the outside. The instant it came into contact with the air, the finger trembled slightly, as if it had sensed the freedom of the air. In the blink of an eye, the origin substance that had been stored in the box over the past few days had been completely sucked dry. Immediately afterwards, a shriek erupted from the auditorium. Very quickly, the shriek disappeared. It turned into a field of silence. Only droplets of crystalline origin substance began to appear, slowly seeping into the finger bone. Immediately afterwards, an aura of madness and malice began to rise from the finger bone. It was like a tidal wave sweeping out in all directions. It was a storm of thirst and malice. It wildly blew off into the distance, greedily enveloping everything, violently absorbing all thoughts, and automatically pulling at all the origin substance it could sense. Its range was the entire Old Tang village. Even an ascendant would find it hard to withstand the gravitational pull from the center of the storm. The red glove retreated a few steps, then heard a crackling sound. It was the sound of his own hair shattering. A few strands of his hair had dried up like weeds, blown off by the wind and falling to the ground. He raised his hand and touched his face, feeling the traces of wrinkles. The corners of his eyes seemed to have aged several decades in an instant, and the dense wrinkles and age spots that only old people would have appeared. Immediately afterwards, flesh and blood began to sprout from the cracks in his finger, and his bones began to grow. In the blink of an eye, the remaining sage insignia had been awakened, spontaneously extracting the origin substance it had plundered, rapidly developing into a complete form. The seed was growing. No, it should be called recovery. The first was the first stage, mercury, the legendary first metal. It was made from salt, sulfur, and mercury. It was the foundation of all living things. With this as the basis, the remnant will in the holy corpse awakened from its silence and cast an indifferent glance at the now unfamiliar world. Next was the second stage, gold. Its characteristics had been discovered, and its attributes had been perfected. After the origin substance had been purified, it began to glow like a sun. However, this flame was green in color and carried with it an icy chill. Wherever it passed, everything seemed to have been eroded by the wind for thousands of years, turned into ashes. Then came the third stage, ether, the path of transcendence. The decaying body could no longer restrain the terrifying light. A mighty force that surpassed common sense brewed within, as if the seed of divine power had been sown. It regained its original transcendent status and struggled with all its might to break free from the shackles of the laws of physics. For example, the reverse scale of a dragon, the tail feathers of a phoenix, the eyes of a Medusa, the wings of an angel, and the horns of a demon. He can no longer be bound by common sense. Finally came the fourth stage, star anemone. The finger bone had now turned into a slender and fair palm, as if it had extended from the void. It had been carved by a skilled craftsman with blood, sweat, and tears. Every detail was flawless. It had been completely sublimated and transcended the mortal world. It was no longer something that mortals could touch. It was only a step away from becoming a legend. At this moment, a rumble came from afar. The earth shook and the mountains shook. An iron fence grew from the earth, slowly sealing Old Tang Town within. It was isolated from the outside. The growth of the palm came to an abrupt halt. There was no more origin substance to allow it to continue recovering to its original state. As if sensing the pitch-black sky outside the auditorium, a regretful sigh came from the void. The red glove's expression suddenly changed. He took out a pocket watch-like depth-measuring device and saw the rapidly rising value. In the blink of an eye, the boarder's degree had reached 60%. This place was being stripped away from the reality by the Astronomy Association. Just a little bit more, just a few dozen seconds more, and the holy corpse would have recovered to the fifth stage, Philosopher's Stone. It would have truly become a miracle in the world. It might even have recovered to the transcendental stage, crown, and taken control of divine authority. However, the abyss between the fourth and fifth stages was difficult to cross at this moment. He was one step too slow. This is impossible. Was it by chance or was it discovered? The red gloves fell into a daze and muttered gloomily. He couldn't imagine where he had exposed himself. Or was there some secret here that he hadn't investigated? Soon, he heard a fleeting voice. It was like a whisper coming from the wind. I can't care so much. Even if there's only one hand, it should be enough. As he said this, the hand pointed behind him, indicating for him to move back a little. The next moment, it raised two fingers and waved in the direction of the auditorium. The sound of a rag being torn apart by a machine was heard. A hurricane gushed out. Wherever it passed, all the bricks were instantly weathered into dust, and the wooden beams withered and shattered. They were swept up into the sky by the gale. The palm slowly rose and slowly clenched between the heavens and the earth. A sharp and ear-piercing sound was heard, and the turbulent world suddenly became still, as if the operating hub was tightly gripped by the palm. The program of the Discovery stripping stopped abruptly. It was as if the entire space was frozen in this hurricane. Suddenly, a roar came from afar. Illegal border crossing detected. Soul imprint comparison completed. Threat level raised. In a short moment when it appeared, AI Ching's phone showed an alert from the satellite above. It even confirmed the origin of the hand. Alien belonging to the terrorist organization Green Sun, 10 disasters fourth. Wind disaster, threat level A, disaster alert has been sent. Although they were shocked and conflicted by AI Ching's report just now, everyone couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. They wanted to thank her from the bottom of their hearts for her stubbornness. Only AI Ching's face became more and more ugly. She silently flipped through her phone. However, she didn't receive a text message that Huaishur and the others had successfully evacuated. Tiske, she frowned irritably. Soon, she no longer hesitated. She raised her head and asked, "Then what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for him to order? Didn't the Special Affairs Division even make a final preparation plan?" After receiving the approval of the middle-aged man and AI Ching at the same time, less than 10 seconds later, a roar came from afar. Thunderous roars came one after another, and the earth shook. 3 kilometers away from the blockade, on a towering hillside, smoke and dust continued to rise. The pungent smell of gunpowder spread with the continuous burst of tremors. The steel behemoth crawled on the ground, reflecting a cold light under the reflection of the lights. With the command of the command center, the huge base unfolded as if wedged into the earth. The heavy barrel slowly lifted and aimed at the sky. The distance calculation was completed. The calculation of the bullet point was completed. The next moment, flames burst out. 11 howitzers that had been waiting for a long time roared, projecting a fatal iron light into the sky. The next moment, a terrifying force enough to incinerate the entire church dozens of times fell from the sky. The hand that was in a deadlock with the blockade seemed to have sensed the sudden attack. It raised its little finger slightly and flicked it to the side. A hurricane suddenly rose, and the color of iron lit up. The violent wind collided with each other, bursting out a sharp sound, and countless sparks flashed. The iron current swept out and brazenly shattered half of the grenades. Then, the little finger moved slightly, and the iron current collapsed inwards, gathering the remaining grenades into a point. The next moment, blazing flames erupted in the sky. The sudden appearance of the flames illuminated the undamaged hand. Then, the second round of bombardment fell from the sky. Very good. Continue. Maintain suppressive fire. In the command center, the middle-aged man was excited. He wasn't discouraged at all. The counterattack of the wind disaster's hand proved that it still didn't have the ability to withstand direct bombardment. Otherwise, there would be no need to waste time on such things. As the shelter of ordinary people and the cornerstone of the world, the reality had the strictest rules and regulations. Unless one reached the level of a natural enemy and turned into a walking human-shaped hell, it was impossible to contend with the laws of physics head-on. As long as there was enough firepower, it wasn't as if there were no records of Crown falling under the siege of an army. It's a pity. If only there were missiles. Ai Ching sighed regretfully. Then, she heard the person in the command center shout in surprise, "The reinforcements from the higher-ups have set off." She was stunned for a moment. First, she sighed in relief. Then, she vaguely felt that something was wrong. The guardian of the reality that was currently on duty in Isya didn't seem to be very reliable. Thinking of the rumors that were circulating among her colleagues, her heart suddenly sank again. Under the frenzied fire of the 16 howitzers, even though it was constantly counterattacking, the palm that contended against the power of the blockade was still sinking inch by inch. It was being suppressed. Even more than half of the church had collapsed. Unfortunately, there were no traces of survivors. This was to be expected. The mutant known as the Beast of Wind disaster was best at creating a vortex of source substances to extract other people's source substances as fuel. Now, the church, no, the entire Laodang town was probably already, in the short period of waiting, the atmosphere in the command center gradually became more and more solemn. In the past, it would take less than 3 minutes to directly airdrop reinforcements to the reality through the Arcana realm. However, the waiting time at this moment was so long. Only the reality guardian who came to reinforce kept sending text messages to comfort the people in the command center. They've set off. They're coming. They're on the way. They'll be there in a minute. Text messages were sent every few minutes. At first, everyone still had hope, but in the end, they didn't want to say anything. Until finally, bad news came from the artillery position. The ammunition was exhausted. There's a bit of a traffic jam. I'll be there soon. With the prompt of the short breath, The hand that was faintly burnt black suddenly lifted up and brazenly defeated the power that stripped the realm of appearance. Then, the 5 fingers clenched into a fist and a hurricane gathered, shining on the iron fence that sealed the entire Laotang town from afar. The next moment, smash! The earth trembled and the mountains shook. In the whistling of the hurricane, there seemed to be countless explosions. The invisible wall that physically sealed the surroundings suddenly shook. The iron fence rumbled, and the ground at the foundation shook and cracks appeared. The blockade was loosened. A crack appeared on the hand, but it didn't care. It raised it again and smashed. Boom! A crack appeared on the iron fence. The metal screeched. Everyone in the command center was pale, but reinforcements were still far away. There was only a light text message. Hold on. I'll be there after another turn. Boom! The fist smashed out again. This time, the cracks on the iron fence spread again, revealing a fatal gap. The beast of wind disaster broke out of the cage. Chapter 23. At that moment, a gust of wind howled. The hand that hung high in the sky slowly rose and aimed at the brightly lit Exion High City in the distance. The 5 fingers slowly clenched. It was as if the hand had grabbed onto something invisible. It pulled with all its might. A sharp screech erupted from the void. It was like the sound of countless pieces of glass being scratched together. The deafening sound spread out. The world shook. It was as if someone was trying to pull out the wedge that held the sky and the earth together. At that moment, a white shadow landed under one of the streetlights at the countryside of Exion High. Finally, I made it! The white dove slowly retracted its wings and landed on the girl's slender arm. As if she had just finished a marathon, she was already drenched in sweat. Her tight-fitting sports t-shirt and running pants were soaked, sticking to her beautiful body. Unfortunately, no one was lucky enough to see her. She gasped for air and looked at the hand that was floating in the air dozens of kilometers away. She shook her head helplessly. Under the illumination of the streetlight, her shadow seemed to come alive. It slowly raised its hands, as if pulling out some invisible weapon. 2. It slashed forward, and then silence descended. At that moment, the rumbling in the distance, the chirping of flying insects, the falling dust, the flowing wind, the rushing river, the rising fire, and the solid ground all stopped. It was as if they had been frozen by an invisible force. In the next moment, a trace that was so thin that it was almost impossible to see extended out from under her feet. It stretched forward in a straight line, spanning 23 kilometers and 411 meters. It was precise to the millimeter of destruction. Without any hesitation, the palm was separated from the middle and fell to the sides. Then it was broken at the waist and turned into 4 pieces. Before the 4 pieces could fall apart, they split into 8 pieces. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256. The cruel and precise geometric increase extended to the limit of human observation. In the end, the shattered origin substance exploded. It turned into a fire that burned everything. Everything ended here. Before this sword that could not even be described with any movement, it had come to an end. It was over. Hopefully, there won't be too many victims. She sighed dejectedly. Then, she heard the sound of the phone in her pocket. Hello, I'll be right there. I got lost just now. I really got lost. There's definitely something wrong with your airdrop. I'll be right there. 5 minutes. I'll be there in 5 minutes. I'm on my way. The pigeon and the girl both disappeared. Great strength of heaven and earth, freedom divine ability. The moment the wind disaster beast's palm shattered, the red glove's face turned ashen. He squeezed out a voice through gritted teeth. White Emperor's son. Pa! A shattering sound suddenly appeared on his face. Cracks spread out, and in an instant, it was as if there were countless swords slashing at him. Half of his body had turned into a bloody mess, and the invisible swords were still tearing at his body until the pendant on his neck let out a wail. The doll with a blank face shattered into dust. The blank doll took his place and bore the remaining power of the White Emperor's son's sword. However, Even the last bit of radiation that leaked out was enough to make him suffer. Even the soul manifestation in his hand, the sneering fish tank, had a terrible crack on it. One of the two baby fishes inside had already flipped on its belly. The other one was also swaying half-dead. It seemed that it did not have much time left to live. Damn it, those monsters. The red glove suddenly bent over and vomited a mouthful of blood. He heard the heavy footsteps in the distance. The army had already begun to move. A ruthless look flashed in his eyes. He took out the detonator from his pocket and pressed it down. The plastic explosives placed around the church lit up with a final countdown. This way, the last traces would be completely wiped out in 15 seconds. It did not matter if he failed, as long as the reincarnation cauldron was still there. He turned around and extended his hand toward the pulpit, but his hand and his sinister smile froze in place. The pulpit was empty. Gone. The reincarnation cauldron was gone. That box had already disappeared without a trace. He furiously opened the pulpit, but found nothing. He roared hoarsely. Amidst the approaching footsteps, he frantically tore the pulpit apart. Still, he could not find anything. When the remaining door of the church was suddenly smashed open and the suppression troops broke in, they saw a man with red eyes like a mad dog standing on the pulpit. He spat and disdainfully gestured his middle finger at the group of soldiers. "Eat sh*T, you bunch of zombies from the Astronomy Society." He threw out a poker card. The poker card suddenly folded in half in the air, pulling his body together. Then he folded again and again along with the poker card. In a flash, he became an insignificant and was sucked into a deep cave and disappeared. The next moment, the flames of destruction engulfed everything. The feeling of excessive blood loss turned out not to be painful. He could not even feel pain. He was just sleepy and had no strength in his body. He was lazy, as if nothing was important. He wanted to sleep, to rest, to let this f***ket-up life end. He closed his eyes and accepted the full taste of this long torture with a clear conscience. A long, undisturbed sleep. Death was coming. After seeing so many deaths and so many different kinds of deaths, Huaishur found that he finally ushered in his own end. It was not terrifying nor painful. There was even no reluctance. He was just sleepy and confused. In a trance, he felt that someone was pushing his body, struggling to hold his stick and push forward, little by little, like a snail pushing a stone. He was flipped over and sprawled on a tattered carpet. Then, he was dragged to a certain place by someone. He smelled the smell of burning, heard the sound of breaking, and hoarse moans as if the whole world was being destroyed. There was a drop of water on Huaishur's face. There was the smell of blood. He opened his eyes with difficulty and saw Yu Dongri next to him. He did not know whether he was alive or dead. And in front of him, the old man who was crawling on the carpet. The one-legged figure pushed forward with all his might, pushed open a door, and turned his head. His face seemed to have been broken. Half of his face did not change at all, as pale as a corpse. The other half spasmed violently, together with the other half of his body. It was as if half of him had died, and the other half was struggling hard, but there was no cure. Seeing Huaishur's dazed eyes, he avoided his eyes. He just rolled up the carpet with difficulty, wrapped himself and Yu Dongri together, and rolled forward with difficulty. "I'm sorry. I have to save her. Huaishur, only I can save her. I'm sorry," he whispered hoarsely, as if apologizing, but he did not expect a response. He just muttered to himself, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." A phone rang. The great llama on the fake phone was singing some love song happily and calling for her husband, but no one picked up the call. "I'm sorry." Blood fell on Huaishur's face, with a warmth of tears. He was shoved into the darkness behind the door and tumbled down the long steps into the cellar full of litter and pickle jars. In the violent tumble and fall, Huaishur saw Lao Yang's face for the last time. He leaned on the doorframe and looked at the young man. The corner of his twitching mouth pulled up into a wretched angle, as if he was smiling. He held the phone that was still vibrating in his hand and waved at him. It was as if he was saying goodbye. Huaishur opened his mouth and wanted to call him, but he could not make a sound. The door was closed. In the darkness, The roar of an explosion came from afar. Terrifying flames and high temperature swept through the entire church, turning the last remnants into ashes. Fleischer closed his eyes. Death hugged him. Someone asked me to bring a message to everyone. The stiff and rigid man was trapped in the chair and kept twitching nervously. The goldfish in his eyes swam lifelessly. He said, his expression suddenly turned crazed, and a wicked smile appeared on his face. The green sun will eventually shine on the world. Bang, 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 bang. In the sudden gunshot, his head exploded, but the gunshots did not stop. After emptying a magazine, he replaced it with a new one, and he continued to pull the trigger, until the thing on the chair turned into a pile of mush. A broken goldfish jumped out from the empty skull. It was shot into a puddle of stinky paste and soon dehydrated into powder. Did you catch him? Ai Ching dropped the gun in her hand expressionlessly. She raised her head to look at the middle-aged man's expression, and she stopped hiding her displeasure. You don't have to say anymore. He escaped, right? We've lasted for so long, and now we're in time for the cleanup. He has a relic that can perform short-distance warp on him. We've already locked down the area around Xian High. What about the survivors? Ai Ching lost interest in listening to him continue. We're looking for them. Then continue the search. Ai Ching pulled back her gaze. Even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground, we have to look until we find their bodies. No one objected. When midnight arrived, news came from the collapsed church ruins. Yu Dongri and Huai Shi have been found. Outside the ruins, Ai Ching was still sitting in the wheelchair. Her expression was calm. What's her condition? Yu Dongri is still alive, but he's heavily injured. As for Huai Shi, the person who reported paused, and his expression became hesitant. They're being resuscitated. The temporary resuscitation room was already a mess. Ai Ching waited quietly outside the door, listening to the chaos inside. What about their breathing? Is there any more? There's no more. Their pulse is about to disappear. Quick, inject them. No, their heartbeat is chaotic. They're almost gone. Where's the defibrillator? Give me the defibrillator. 1, 2, 3, bang. 1, 2, 3, bang. After a long time, there was no more sound from inside. The doctor who was in charge of resuscitation walked out from inside. He removed his mask, and his expression was regretful. I'm sorry, we're one step too late, Ai Ching nodded. She did not say anything and allowed those people to walk past her. Soon, Ai Ching finally saw Huai Shi. As if in a deep sleep, the young man was lying on the operating table. The bullet hole in his chest was pale, and there was no blood flowing out. His empty eyes looked at the shadowless lamp above his head. The last heartbeat stopped. Ai Ching was silent. She lowered her eyes, and her palms that gripped the armrest were pale. After a long time, she said calmly, Then let's follow the procedure. She turned the wheelchair around and wanted to leave. But then the wheelchair stopped moving. She seemed to have heard something. Chapter 24. In his deep sleep, Huai Shi felt like he was falling. In the darkness, down, down, down. It seemed like there were many people accompanying him. Some of them were screaming in fear, while others were numbly struggling. But soon, they all disappeared. He fell into the water, as if he had sunk into a deep pool. Then, as if he was weightless, he floated along with the current into the darkness. It seemed like he was already dead, but it also seemed like he was on the road to death. It would be soon. That was what a voice told him. But death seemed to have no end, carrying him deeper and deeper into the darkness, until he was carried to the muddy shore by the icy tide. A stooped figure came out of the darkness, looking down at him. Then, the figure bent down and pulled at his legs, dragging him to the edge of a thatched hut on the muddy shore. Someone knocked on the door. The door opened. The smell of rotting corpses filled the air. In the thatched hut, only the blood-stained operating table was lit. A white-haired old man with a face full of wrinkles was wearing a mask. He was completely focused on dissecting the corpse in front of him, occasionally drawing a few strokes on a drawing on the table next to him. Under the dim illumination of the oil lamp, the perfectly processed specimens on the hooks all around were dripping with antiseptic liquid. However, the faces of the humans who had been turned into specimens were still filled with the terror of death. The stooped figure pointed at Huai Shi, reaching out to the old man behind the door as if asking for something. The old man glanced at the youth on the ground with murky eyes and slowly shook his head. "He's not completely dead yet. Why are you selling a living person to me?" Soon. The stooped figure let out a strange sound, like a mix between a dog and a fox. "He's almost. Origin substance. Origin substance. I can only give you half. If you want, then keep him. If you don't, then drag him away." The old man folded his arms, watching coldly. The figure seemed to be angered, and it began to scream loudly. The old man didn't move. He stared at it indifferently until it reached out its hand in frustration. Half. An old copper coin was tossed into its hand. "If there's nothing else, then get lost. Don't disturb my work." The old man lowered his head and glanced at Huai Shi on the ground. He frowned and lifted one of Huai Shi's legs. With great effort, he dragged Huai Shi to the operating table and swept the broken corpse aside. When the shadow left, the sound of the door closing caused Huai Shi's pupils to tremble. He tried his best to move, but when he opened his mouth, he coughed up a large amount of blood. "Not dead yet." The old man lifted Huai Shi's eyelids and looked at the whites of his eyes in surprise. He pinched Huai Shi's bones with his withered hands and finally nodded with satisfaction. "It's a very standard structure. Although it's not strong enough, it should be able to be used as a temporary spare part. I wonder if dismembering it while it's still alive can preserve the best effect." He sighed and cut open the arteries on Huai Shi's hands and thighs without hesitation. Huai Shi's throat made a gurgling sound, but it was to no avail. Warm blood quickly spread from his body, flowing along the grooves of the operating table and into the filthy cylinder. "You have something to say?" The old man looked at his trembling pupils and said somewhat helplessly, "You're about to die. Isn't it better to die quietly? I've seen many people like you. You've already crossed the border and fallen into hell. Isn't it natural for you to die? Right now, it's just that the origin substance hasn't dissipated yet. What's there to complain about?" He pulled out a bottle of medicine and poured it into Huai Shi's bloody mouth. An intense, spicy, and strange sour taste stimulated Huai Shi's throat. A scorching sensation like copper liquid flowed down his throat, igniting his body like a raging fire. He could only let out a hoarse groan of pain. "This is the medicine I bought from the kobold. It's used to mummify people. It can keep their organs active when they're about to die. But don't even think about living. It's just converting your remaining life into vitality and squeezing it out. This way, you can say a few more words before you die, and it'll be more convenient for me to work. How about you cooperate a little?" The old man lowered his head and cut open Huai Shi's broken right hand. "Remember, don't scream. I hate noisy sounds." Huai Shi struggled to suppress the sound of pain. His whole body twitched. As the old man said, he could actually make a weak sound before he died. "Where's this?" "In your words, the 12th level of hell. My corpse workshop, a place where I sell some small things to customers. You'll become one of those small things in a while." As the old man spoke, he continued to dissect Huai Shi's right hand without hesitation. The knife was very precise. It penetrated through the muscles, but did not hurt Huai Shi's bones. It was as if he was simply peeling the skin off a fruit. His movements were practiced and natural. "How about we make a deal?" Huai Shi swallowed the taste of pain and panted with difficulty. "I actually want to continue living. Let me go." "No, I've already bought your corpse. How can you not die? Also, you won't live for more than a few minutes. If you die outside, I'll have to drag you back in." Under the dim light, the old man's two eyeballs moved around on different axes. One black, I stared at Huai Shi, while the other red, I stared intently at the place where the knife was cutting. "Look at your body. It's empty of origin substance. You don't have much time left. Even though your life force is so strong, it's about to burn out like ashes. Wouldn't it be better if you just obediently died?" You can even burn some of your remaining value. Huaishi's arm had already been completely dissected. The old man carefully extracted the bones and soaked them in a preservative solution. Every time he took out a piece, the old man excitedly waved it in front of Huaishi's face. Huaishi stared blankly at the ceiling covered in dry blood. The pain had already been replaced by numbness. Even his voice had become dry and hoarse. "I can't die here yet. Why can't you die?" The old man said seriously. "Everyone can die." As if he had been hooked into a conversation, the old man meticulously dissected Huaishi's left hand, chattering endlessly amidst the blood. "I've seen many people. They all feel that they are very important, that they play a very special role in this world. But when they came here, they all died. After they died, the world continued to move forward. The sun rose as usual. Reality didn't stop because they died. So they were wrong. In fact, they were no different from others." He pointed to the corpses hanging in the air waiting to be sold and explained to Huaishi one by one. This person was once a high and mighty figure. This person was once a messenger of justice who killed countless evil people. This person was once the teacher of a dictator. Under his guidance, the dictator turned from a tyrannical person into a wise leader of a generation. This is the dictator he taught. But they are all dead. Since they are already alive, death is irresistible. Even gods are the same. 100 years, 200 years, watching the world change. When 1,000 years have passed, even gods will feel that this world is very boring. Compared to them, what are you? But I still don't want to die. Huaishi tried hard to blink his eyes, not letting the uncontrollable tears blur his vision. "How about this? Don't look at me because I look weak. In fact, I'm also a tough guy. A man's tears are worth 1,000 gold. I've already cried. Can you let me go?" Chapter 25. Not good. The old man sighed. "You're so upset that you can't even die in peace. I don't want to die either. Can't you just let me go?" Huaishi's breathing became turbid because the old man had already cut open his chest and taken out his broken lungs. "See, they're all broken, all broken." The old man wiped his sweat with his wrist and threw the things into the trash can. "Your lungs are gone. Why are you so annoying? You can live for half an hour if you don't have a heart. Half an hour is fine. Stop nagging." The old man cut off the blood vessels entangled in the spine and pulled out his internal organs. Huaishi never thought that it would feel like this when someone pulled out his intestines from his stomach. Ignoring the pain and fear, it actually felt cool. "I've emptied you out. Accept your fate." The old man threw everything into the bucket. Blood and undigested food splashed on him, making him take out a rag to wipe his apron angrily. "What did you eat? It's so messy. A trader friend treated me to hot pot at noon." Huaishi had already lost his breath. What was incredible was that he could still make a sound. Perhaps the fear of death had broken through his disguise. He had never felt so lonely and sad. He didn't want to die, but he wanted to find someone to talk to, so he kept talking. "Have you eaten hot pot? You look like a foreigner. Hot pot is a specialty of China. Let me tell you, although Lao Yang's people are troublesome, his hot pot is really the best." The old man stopped talking and buried his head in dissecting Huaishi's body. He carefully dug out his bones from top to bottom. Even if Huaishi promised a lot of money, beautiful women, and other temptations, he didn't relent. Even if Huaishi cursed him, he didn't stop. In the end, only a bloody skeleton was left lying on the dissection table. He came naked and left naked. He took off his stinky clothes, but this guy was still King alive. And for some reason, he kept talking trash. Even if the old man angrily used a chisel to cut open his skull, took out the steaming tissue, and threw it into the trash can in front of the skeleton, he still kept persuading the old man to put down the butcher's knife. "You've already been cut to this extent. Why don't you hurry up and die?" Who the CK knows? "You son of a B*TCH, psycho, old pervert." A hoarse, monotonous voice came from the skeleton. "I say, can you save me? I'll sell myself to you. As long as you're not gay, I'll do anything you say." "Wait, I'm okay with being gay. Really, I can accept it if you're gentle." The old man's white hair stood up in anger. revealing the stitches on his face. He slammed the table in a frenzy. Death is destined. Even if it's meant to be, I don't want to. Huaishur hesitated for a moment and tried to negotiate with him. Can't I die after I've lived enough? The old man fell silent. He scratched his head madly and let out an irritated roar. It was as if his will to fight had been completely defeated. He bent down and slowly put away his knife, shovel, and scissors. He sorted them and put them back into the toolbox. He untied his apron, took out a comb, and carefully combed his messy hair. Fuck, 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 fuck. He suddenly roared and angrily threw the toolbox on the ground. He violently stepped on it, picked up the axe in the corner, and smashed the cabinet in the corner into pieces to vent his anger. F***. What the hell is this? He roared at the ceiling as if he was glaring at something. Did you see that? E1, take your test subject away from here. Immediately. I don't want to see him again. At that moment, time seemed to have stopped. Everything was frozen in place. There seemed to be a door opening in the void. A ray of light shone from it and hung down, pulling him up slowly like a rope. Huaishur looked around blankly, not knowing what had happened. He didn't know if he should follow the tradition left behind by his predecessors and turn around to give him the middle finger. An instant later, he was swallowed up by the light. Or perhaps it was better to say that he was swallowed up. The silver-gray light was like a sea that swallowed him up. He was pulled up by an invisible force, as if he were passing through the depths of the ocean. He could feel a terrifying weight pressing down on him from all directions. But what made him even more terrified was that every drop of water in this sea of silver light was so dense that it had almost condensed into liquid origin substance. As far as the eye could see, it was almost limitless. It was impossible for a human's vision or perception to see the end of it. It was as if it covered the entire world. The Silver Sea. It was a sea of nothingness where all human origin substances were gathered. It was the source of all intelligence. It was a mighty existence that was above all miracles. Crow's description once again appeared in his mind. In that moment, he broke through the sea and was tossed into the air. He floated in the void between the sea and the sky, gazing at the dark sky that was so pure that there were no impurities and the silver sea that flowed with endless light below his feet. In the distance, he seemed to see two faint shadows sitting on the surface of the sea. Speaking of which, after seeing your picture last time, my daughter cried and made a fuss with me. She said that she wanted a crow like her big sister. I had no choice. At that time, I was in a hurry to leave, so I could only grab a pigeon and give it to her. She asked me why the color was different. I could only tell her that it was originally black, but when its mother gave birth to it, she ran out of ink. Sigh. I haven't seen her for 7 years. I wonder if she's doing well and how her studies are going. A middle-aged man with sideburns sat cross-legged on the surface of the sea, smoking a cigarette and holding a can of beer in his hand. He helplessly complained to his drinking buddy beside him. He casually flicked the ashes of his cigarette into the sea of miracles below his feet. Don't worry, don't worry. I just saw her before I came. She's grown up quite a bit. She's already a slender and elegant young lady. The crow rolled a cigarette and the same kind of beer with its wings. It even patted the middle-aged man's shoulder. Although the pigeon you gave her seems to have caused a small problem. My contractor has come out. The bearded man raised his eyebrows and glanced at it. He looks ordinary. Is there anything special about him? Does playing the cello count? The kind that can add points for the college entrance examination. Is he that good? Is there any trick? The bearded man's eyes lit up. Sigh, this is probably talent, right? Others can't learn it. The crow flapped its wings, raised its head, and drank the last of the beer in the can. It got up and said goodbye. It's getting late. I'll take my leave first. But then again, as the guardian of the Silver Sea, there are only 7 natural enemies in the world. Is it really okay to let a fugitive like me swagger away? The bearded middle-aged man thought for a moment, scratched his face in distress, and sighed. Forget it. I'll get off work in 2 days. I've been slacking here for 7 years. Can't you let me relax for a while? Then I really have to thank you. The crow smiled graciously, spread its wings, and flew into the distance. That nimble shadow was reflected on the surface of the silver sea. It gradually elongated and danced like a flame, changing until it finally turned into a slender figure. The black skirt rippled like water, spreading to the ground without a speck of dust. The edges of the simple style were exquisitely decorated with dark gold rust, like thorns extending up the edge of the skirt. Just as Huaisher looked up sluggishly, he only saw the slender legs exposed by the skirt, white and dazzling. The back of the long dress was hollowed out, revealing the smooth and clean back, as well as the gorgeous patterns that covered almost the entire back. Countless crimson colors intertwined, forming a strange and solemn pattern, as if it was constantly changing, making people unable to see it clearly. Soon, the strange tattoo was covered by the black hair that draped over her shoulders. Just as Huaisher was stunned, she raised her head, revealing a mature and delicate side face. "Let's go, my contractor." She hugged a familiar box, hooked her finger at the youth, and smiled proudly. "I'll send you home." In that instant, in the suburbs of Xian High City, Huaisher's bedroom, a terrifying wave of origin substance suddenly erupted. A burning light lit up. The Book of Destiny. As if lifted by an invisible force, countless pages of the book flipped wildly, and a sea of origin substance appeared, turning into a burning flame. That was the origin substance that had continuously extracted from Huaisher's body over a long period of time. Now, in the blink of an eye, it was burned to ashes, turning into endless light and transformations. Page after page was burned into nothingness in the fire, until finally, only the title page with his name was left. On the title page, the incomplete moon began to grow again. The last gap was closed. After reading through countless deaths and collecting the last of his own death, the endless records of deaths turned into pure ink, moving in the shadow of the moon, circling around the center of the circle, turning into a vortex that spun violently. Countless deaths were madly colliding with each other. Finally, it broke through the limits of the moon, tearing apart the bindings, revealing its solemn outline. Countless pitch-black deaths spun, turning into a giant vortex, holding up a violent circle. Sharp flames protruded from within, turning into its crown. It was a ferocious pitch-black sun. Beep! As if it was an illusion, the heartbeat chart in the emergency room rippled weakly. Life was renewed. Chapter 26. Huaisher opened his eyes and saw the light of the afternoon outside the window. Dust was detached from the ceiling and danced chaotically in the dim light. The air was filled with a familiar musty smell, and he heard the sound of dripping water next door. This was his home. After a dream, he was lying on a broken sofa in the hall. "I'm still alive? How long did I sleep?" He got up in a daze and touched his chest. He saw that the wound was bandaged properly. There was a faint throbbing pain, but it didn't hinder his movement. In particular, he discovered that the Book of Destiny had transformed from its physical form into his will. He could flip through it on his own with just a thought. Soon, he heard a voice beside him. "About 10 hours or so. It seems that you're recovering well." The girl sitting in front of the window looked up at him. Her calm face made Huaisher uneasy. "What happened last night? By the way, old Lou, you Dongri? Ah, he's alive. The operation should be over now. He's in the intensive care unit. If he recovers well, he might have a chance to wake up in the future. But this isn't your fault. It's better to say that you're lucky to be alive after being targeted by Green Sunday, AI," Ching said calmly. "Although a lot of things happened last night and the mastermind escaped for you, it's all over." "Over? Yes, it's over." AI Ching nodded. "No matter what happens next has nothing to do with you. No one will target you in the future." She stared at Huaisher and told him solemnly, "Congratulations. Congratulations, you can return to your peaceful life." If AI Ching had told him this yesterday, he would have been overjoyed. But now, hearing this news, he couldn't feel happy at all. He didn't even have a happy reaction. AI Ching didn't say anything else. She closed the book and prepared to leave. After rejecting Huaisher's offer, she got up with the help of her crutches and said goodbye. "What's wrong?" She saw Huaishi's absent-minded look and tilted her head. Is there anything else you want to ask? If you're worried about Yu Dongri's car, someone will drive it away in 2 days. Don't worry, I'll call you before I come. Huaishi shook his head and looked at her. I've actually been wondering where I've seen you these days. AI Qing was silent for a long time before she calmly shook her head. It doesn't matter if you can't remember. It's not important anyway. Just forget about it. She walked out of the door, took one last look at Huaishi, and nodded to say goodbye. Then, I'm going to Jinling to report on my work. I wish you all the best in the future. I hope we won't meet again. She said, Farewell, Huaishi. The door closed. In the silence, Huaishi was silent as he watched AI Qing get into the car with the help of the chauffeur. The door was closed, and she walked away slowly, finally disappearing at the end of the road. For the whole afternoon, Huaishi sat on the steps of the garden, his usual place, looking at the bare nursery in a daze. Feeling lost, right? Crow appeared out of nowhere, stood on his shoulder, and patted his head. Don't be sad. Come on, have a smoke to relax? If you really can't, buy a bottle of wine, drink a few sips, and sleep. Everything will be over. Everything will be over? Huaishi looked at her. Yes, everything will be over. Crow said casually. Isn't everything over, Huaishi? As you wish, you've gotten rid of those messy things and welcomed back the peaceful life you've always wanted. Huaishi did not answer. Was it over? Maybe, but the relief he expected did not come. There was no relief. There was even a trace of anger that came from nowhere. Obviously, nothing was over. He suddenly remembered Lao Yang's face. At the last moment, when that bastard looked at him, he was actually smiling. Once he was about to die, it was as if he could be free. Obviously, nothing could be free. He just sold his life in exchange for another person's life. Would the woman he saved be happy? What on earth was he so proud of? And Yu Dongri, who was now in the intensive care unit. Huaishi used to think that they were his friends, but now one of them was shot from behind by him, and the other one was shot from behind by him. He lost 2 friends, and the initiator of all this had already slipped away. How could it end so suddenly? He raised his hand to cover his face. He could no longer hold back the anger and exhaustion in his heart. Damn it. Crow looked at him with pity. For the first time in a long time, she saw Huaishi so angry. Other than that, it seemed that no matter what he encountered, he would only shamelessly lie on the ground and let the chaotic wheel of fate run over him like an old salted fish. He was born with a good temper. Let it be strong. Anyway, I feel good. However, she had a nagging feeling that Huaishi was missing something. She was hiding something, or perhaps trying to hide something. It was only now that she vaguely understood that perhaps this empty garden was the place where he was most relaxed. Only here would he be able to face her calmly, even though he was so resistant to this place in his heart. I say, Huaishi. She asked seriously, is this place important to you? Probably. Huaishi looked down at the small garden under the steps and was silent for a long time. If you don't want to say it, just pretend I didn't ask. Crow shook her head. After all, prying into your privacy is not something to be proud of. No. Anyway, there's no need to hide it. I'm just thinking about how to tell you. Huaishi rubbed his face and pondered for a long time, thinking seriously. He said, when I was young, I had a high fever. At that time, my parents were very angry because they were playing abroad and I didn't take good care of myself. I didn't let them worry, so they gave me money and told me to go to the hospital myself. But I was too sleepy and uncomfortable at that time, so I didn't go and fell asleep on the sofa in the living room. Huaishi said, I remember that I had a lot of strange dreams at that time. I dreamed that I seemed to have grown wings and was flying in the sky. I dreamed that this old house could talk, and it wiped my sweat and poured water for me. Later, I heard the sound of someone climbing over the wall from the backyard. His face was covered, and he was holding a knife in his hand. I hid behind the door and didn't dare to speak. I was very scared. If I was found by that person, I might die. I didn't want to die. He stared at the raised ground and whispered softly, so I killed him. Crow was stunned. He turned to look at Huaishi's face, but he couldn't find any trace of joke. There was only an unsettling calmness. That's right. Huaisha repeated calmly. I killed him. Hiding behind the door, he used the axe and aimed at the back of the person's head when he came in. It only took one hit, and the person fell. Then he did it again and again until he had no strength left. When he found that the person couldn't move, he was first at a loss, then uneasiness and panic. Finally, what emerged was a courage that even he himself was afraid of. In the days of the high fever, he dragged the body to the garden, dug up the ground, and quietly buried it with the axe. He closed the soil, washed his hands, and returned to bed. It was as if nothing had happened. Anyway, the stone marrow hall was so remote that no one would come. Anyway, his parents were so lazy that they wouldn't care about the garden. Anyway, no one would find out that he had killed someone. In this way, he fell asleep in fear. He had many strange dreams, but he couldn't remember those dreams. Along with some of his previous memories, when he woke up, the high fever unexpectedly subsided. But from that moment on, Huaisha's childhood was over. Since then, day after day, year after year. Thinking about it carefully, I'm really lucky, right? Huaisha said softly. At first, I was very afraid that someone would come to catch me, that someone would find the thing I buried in the garden. But until now, it seems that no one has found it. If I didn't hide it back then, I wouldn't be so tired now. No, if I was killed back then, I wouldn't be like now, living a life that I can't even bear to look at. Actually, you don't have to torture yourself. Crow couldn't help but sigh. Have you ever thought of such a possibility? Maybe this is just one of the nightmares you have when you have a high fever. Yes, maybe. Huaisha nodded calmly. I bought a shovel many times, but I lost it many times. Every time I stood here, I would hesitate. I was afraid of what was hidden underneath. In fact, I'm not afraid of digging up the body, but I'm afraid of the truth. He said, if I dig up here, I won't be able to deceive myself anymore. At that time, how can I go back to my peaceful life? He paused for a moment and suddenly laughed softly. I thought I would deceive myself for the rest of my life. Now, it seems that there is no need to be afraid of anything. With that, Huaisha picked up the rusty shovel in the corner, returned to the center of the garden, looked for the original mark, and stood still. Then the first handful of soil was shoveled up. Crow was stunned. Then the second shovel, and the third shovel. Huaisha's movements were fast. Even if the wound under the bandage burst and blood oozed out, there was no hesitation. He chiseled away the weeds in the way, shoveled away the roots underground, and dug out the soil and mud that buried the nightmare. He was sweating profusely. You know, right? About my family. Huaisha had his back to Crow. He talked to her, but also seemed to be talking to himself. In fact, I know very well that since I was born, my parents have never liked me. After my grandfather passed away, they didn't care about me anymore. They didn't need me at all. When they were here, I was like a burden in their way. After they left, I became a homeless stray dog. Just like that, they've been tearing down the east wall to repair the west wall, sewing and mending, and they had lived for so many years. Now, if I can't make money, not only the tuition fees, I can't even live. I feel that such a life has no value. In fact, even I often think, why do I have to live such a tiring life? Anyway, it's always so miserable. No matter how much I struggle, it's useless. Sometimes, I'm even laughed at and looked down upon. Isn't it easier to give up occasionally? But no matter how sad and bitter it is, I feel that I can hold on. Even if I have to betray my dignity occasionally, I won't be angry. Because I know that as long as I continue to move forward, everything will be fine. Even if the change is always insignificant. There are people like Lao Yang who are willing to introduce jobs to me and occasionally find excuses to give me more money. There are also old Lou who is willing to treat me to a meal and clean up the trouble I caused in the club. Even if I shoot him in the back, he still wants me to escape when I'm in danger. Doesn't this mean that my life has value? Huaisha asked softly, but no one responded to his words. Sweat dripped from his face and fell into the pit that had been dug. But now, he lowered his eyes, raised the pick again, and shoveled down with all his strength. It was as if he wanted to smash the ferocious face in his memory. My value has been denied. Bang! The shovel seemed to have hit something, and a huge crack appeared. But nothing could be seen in the pit. There was no body, no skeleton, nothing. Only the scattered glow of the setting sun vaguely reflected a cruel outline. It was like an axe. Huaisher bent down, reached out, and grasped the handle. He said, "I'm going to kill him." Under the light of the setting sun, the crow stared at the outline in Huaisher's hand in astonishment. It was an invisible piece of metal forged purely from origin substance. Burning rage and icy killing intent mixed together, reflecting a cruel light. It was the killing intent and death that had been sleeping here for 7 years that had been given substance. It was an iron weapon created from nightmares and fear. It was as if he was holding a flame. In that instant, Huaisher's right hand was ignited by that invisible force, and white flames rose up. The true appearance was revealed from the silence. "So that's how it is. So that's how it is," she murmured softly, suddenly realizing what was happening to Huaisher's body. He had broken through the barrier between spirit and matter and realized the transformation between iron and origin substance. After 7 years, Huaisher finally crossed the long period of stress. As the origin substance burned, his nature sublimated, and he welcomed his own soul. That was the one and only true soul name that the Silver Ocean bestowed upon him at the end. Sealing hand. Chapter 27. It was almost nightfall. The hall of the Chalcedony Hall had been cleaned up, leaving only a chair in the middle. In the dim light, Huaisher held a candle in his hand. He felt like he was in a cult. Is it really okay to do this? Probably not. Crow shrugged calmly. I know you want to find clues through the records of Lao Yang in the Book of Destiny, but I need to remind you that although it's a good idea, you may not find any useful records through regular reading. After all, the most important thing to him is obviously his wife. Of course, if you want to see some PDA, just pretend I didn't say anything. Huaisher sighed. If you have something to say, just say it. Can you be less pretentious? I'm just worried that you're not mentally prepared. Crow whistled. If you want to find something useful, you have to use a less safe method, you understand? Take a risk, right? Huaisher sighed and sat down on the chair. Yes, I want to talk about a bunch of principles. You know about psychic communication, right? Nonsense. Are you going to let Lao Yang possess you? Similar. Crow shrugged like a human. Simply put, you can understand that the Book of Destiny itself is a control device for an important item, and what you've been reading is just a table of contents. It's like you have a computer and you're ready to commit some cybercrime. What you need to do now is to use Old Yang's records as the account password, quietly climb over the wall to access a dangerous illegal server, and then look for Old Yang's browsing records. In addition to the Internet Regulatory Commission's investigation, there's also the danger of Trojan horse and virus implantation. You understand? Will I die? Not likely. After all, Lao Yang is just an ordinary person. After he dies, his records are just a pile of old files that will naturally be erased. Crow patted him on the shoulder. No matter how bad it is, it's better to be dead, right? Oh, isn't that my normal life? Huaisher calmly accepted. He even had time to joke about himself. Let's be quick and hurry up. I'm relieved that you have this kind of awareness. Take out the Book of Destiny. Crow glanced at him and suddenly turned into a puff of green smoke. The smoke dissipated, revealing the appearance of a feather pen. As Huaisher opened his hand, the Book of Destiny, which had become one with him, appeared in his hand. The cover opened, and under her control, the countless records of Huaisher over the years disappeared. Immediately afterwards, a hand-drawn, old-fashioned computer login screen. Fortunately, I left a lot of origin, or you wouldn't even be able to pay for the call. A few dozen origin substances flowed out from the tip of the pen, turning into ink. Under her control, the dialing progress bar slowly increased. Remember, after you go in, you can only stay on the outside. You absolutely cannot go too deep. You're not allowed to act recklessly, look around, or touch anything. In any case, apart from what you need to do, don't do anything else. Hold the candle in your hand. Once the flame goes out, come back immediately. Do you understand? Crow reminded him one last time. Just as Huaisher nodded, he felt his vision go dark. The ink on the page suddenly twisted into a vortex, pulling him into it. It was as if he had fallen for tens of thousands of years, but also as if only a second had passed. Fleischer seemed to have experienced many things during this process, but when he stood firmly in the darkness, he quickly forgot about them. Don't look around. I help you erase those memories. If you don't want to have nightmares, don't think about it anymore. You only have 3 minutes. Little brother, hurry up. The crow's urging woke him up from his trance. The candle in his hand was burning rapidly, illuminating his surroundings. It was like a dilapidated library. The air was filled with dust and mold. In the deathly silence, Fleischer stood between countless bookshelves, anxiously looking around. It was as if he was the only person in this silent darkness that seemed to melt away even death. If it weren't for the candlelight in his hand, he would have gone crazy. A blood-curdling scream came from the distance, followed by a loud explosion. Dust began to fall from the ceiling. Not knowing what had happened, Fleischer really wanted to lift the curtain to take a look. However, when he looked through the hole in the curtain and saw a pale white eye staring at him, he wisely gave up on this idea. There are still 2 minutes and 40 seconds. How long are you going to dawdle for? Crow angrily rebuked. It's also very dangerous for me to be your lookout. What do you think that sound was? You were almost discovered by a predator. Hurry up. Fleischer didn't dare to dawdle anymore. He looked down at the candle in his hand. After fusing with Lao Yang's broken record, the candle's light pointed to the deepest part of the darkness, guiding him forward. There seemed to be something else in the darkness. There was a constant sound, but nothing could be seen in the dim light. There was only the sound of water droplets and the friction of something. It seemed to be waiting for something. Fleischer increased his speed. The sharp sound of the old floorboards being stepped on continuously sounded, spreading into the depths of the darkness. After a long time, he heard Crow's voice. It's this bookshelf, 3rd row, 2nd book from the left. Hurry up. There's still 1 minute. Following her instructions, Fleischer found the book she was talking about among the monotonous spines on the bookshelf. All the books here seemed to be the same. Even the spines and covers didn't have any markings. It was as if they'd been randomly thrown here, uncared for. However, the moment Fleischer opened it, he suddenly felt a chill. The premonition of death appeared again. Something was staring at him. With an inhuman shriek, the floor, bookshelves, and even the ceiling began to tremble. Streaks of darkness extended out like dark flowing water, reaching out in all directions, searching for the traces of its prey. With the candlelight, he could barely distinguish what it looked like, but he couldn't believe it. It was all hair, gathered together one by one, convulsing like a snake. The dry and cold hair greedily touched everything around it. There were sounds of struggle and hissing in the darkness, followed by disturbing chewing sounds. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Fleischer swallowed her saliva and carefully shifted her position. Her pitch-black hair slithered past his feet like a snake and flowed into the depths of the darkness. Are you here to see Animal World? Don't worry about the librarian who has been assimilated by hell. She can't find you before the candle goes out. Fleischer sucked in a breath of cold air. What the hell is this place? Isn't it a bit late for you to ask this now? Crow said helplessly. You still have 50 seconds. Fleischer didn't dare to delay any longer. He opened the cover. With the light of the book, he saw the dense handwriting on the page. However, the handwriting didn't seem to need to be read. The moment he looked at it, it seemed to come alive. It followed his line of sight and drilled into his consciousness, turning into countless flickering shadows. At first glance, Fleischer saw Lao Yang, the grandson, squatting on the toilet to cheer him up. My eyes. Fleischer subconsciously held his breath and quickly flipped through this paragraph. All the records seemed to be fragmented and not systematic. He could only flip through them randomly. There were very few big chunks, and they were all trivial matters. There was even a confession to the art teacher when he received a little red flower in the 3rd grade of primary school. Lao Yang, you're quite precocious. Fleischer sighed, seeing that there was still a small half of the candle left. He quickly flipped through this paragraph and continued to look. Soon, he saw his sister-in-law with a pale face in the ward, and Lao Yang sitting by the bed in high spirits. Honey, don't worry. I have money. At the end of the month, we'll transfer to Chengdu Provincial Hospital. I've already found the experts. He gently covered the slightly pale palm. In 2 years, when your body is better, you can give me a big fat boy. A daughter is fine too. I like both. Looking at her smile, Lao Yang also laughed. It was as if he had been redeemed. Huaisher turned a page sadly. However, when he looked down, there were fragments in his memory. In a series of broken intentions, it was full of pain, fear, and uneasiness. In the end, a figure appeared. The smile was cynical, the hair was withered and yellow, and the pair of red gloves that Huaisher would never forget. Then it's a deal. As his 5 fingers spread out, it covered Lao Yang's face. A cold feeling poured into his brain. After that, there were continuous nightmares and trance. More and more fragments appeared. It was as if he was drunk. He maintained his daily life, but more often, he gradually became a walking corpse. He didn't even know what he was doing. Huaisher, can you do it? There are still 20 seconds. Crow urged. Soon. Huaisher looked at the candle that was about to burn to the bottom and frantically flipped through it. Fragments. He went to the hospital to deliver food, went to the bank to transfer the money, called to urge the balance, and then he received a call. The Tachibana Group's welcome party needs a cellist, right? Leave it to me. Huaisher, haven't you seen that kid? Is there a problem with his ability? Hey, yes, it's a deal. After hanging up the phone, Lao Yang proudly crossed his legs and hung up the phone. He took out a notebook and jotted down the brief summary. Then he sent a text message to Huaisher. That kid must be jumping for joy when he finds out. However, when he was writing the address, his expression suddenly stiffened. The address sent was completely different from the one he had just jotted down. Then, he dialed an unknown number and reported stiffly. Transporter number 4 is in position. Very good. Come to me. Hoarse laughter came from the phone. Lao Yang got up and picked up the key. In that instant, a gust of wind blew, and the candle's light trembled. The remnant light was extinguished. A strand of black hair quietly wrapped around Huaisher's ankle, bringing with it a cold touch, as if it was frozen by ice. Strand by strand, it groped upwards. In a flash, half of Huaisher's body went numb. Damn it! How did the waves of the silver sea reach here? Huaisher, come back immediately. Crow's angry voice sounded, You're being entangled. Soon. I'm about to find it. Huaisher didn't have time to respond to her. He sped up and flipped through the pages, but the countless strands of hair grew faster and faster, avoiding the light of the candle. They grew on Huaisher's back, spread, and wrapped around his limbs, getting tighter and tighter. Lao Yang was driving, following the main road to the east, turning left on Binhai Avenue. Huaisher sped up again and heard the sound of the waves in the distance. The black hair wrapped around his neck and tightened, making him unable to breathe. The candle trembled, and the last ray of light was about to go out. Lao Yang had already stopped the car and walked out of the underground parking lot. He walked forward with slow movements that drove Huaisher crazy. He turned left, went up, and climbed the stairs. Huaisher felt the whine of his cervical vertebrae. The hair was rising, following his face, and was about to drill into his eyes, mouth, and nose. The premonition of death was like falling into the ice sea. It gradually turned cold from the inside out. At that moment, he saw Lao Yang push open a door. In the darkness behind the door, a familiar face appeared. At that moment, the candle went out. The darkness surged like a spring, swallowing him. At the last moment, an invisible force pulled him up, suddenly breaking through the dark fog. It was like riding a roller coaster upside down, going up as fast as lightning. But then a strand of black hair floated up, wrapped around his ankle like a rope, and pulled him down. Go away! Huaisher used the last of his strength, and the invisible axe fell, cutting off the black hair. At the moment when he lost consciousness, he only heard an angry scream from the darkness. When he opened his eyes again, he was already back in the familiar living room. He bent down, frantically vomiting the last bit of food in his stomach, and heard Crow's angry scolding. Are UF asterisk king crazy? Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. You were assimilated by that place. You will forever stay in the depths of hell with those damn things. She stared at Huai Shi angrily. You have been remembered by that thing. Before you break through to the fifth order and become the crown one, don't even think about entering that place again. I found him. Huai Shi tried his best to breathe, and saliva and tears flowed out, but his eyes were frighteningly bright, like the high beams on the highway of hell. I found him, he whispered hoarsely. I found him. Chapter 28. By the time Huai Shi recovered from his coma, it was already nighttime. Speaking of which, last night's incident made the headlines of the East Asian news. Crow held the phone screen in his hand and sighed. After all, it was an emergency mobilization. Even the White Emperor's son was mobilized. It definitely couldn't be hidden from those flies. Tomorrow's news? Huai Shi tried to stretch his head to take a look. When he saw the app, he was stunned. Isn't this the lousy newspaper that doesn't say anything except the truth? This lousy newspaper broke all kinds of unreliable and strange news every 2 to 3 days. It was really strange to be able to live until now. As long as you pay, they will occasionally tell the truth, right? Crow sighed. After all, it's the largest, most expensive, and most shady intelligence company and intermediary group in the entire border. As long as the industry in the present realm can be used as a transportation channel, it's enough. However, news about ascendants is generally more reliable. Crow handed over the phone to him. Now the identity of the mastermind behind the scenes has been uncovered. A level 3 ascendant, originally a Roman guard, mysteriously disappeared for a few years. When he reappeared in Baghdad, he was already a member of the famous terrorist organization Green Sunday. After joining Green Sun, according to the rules, he removed his real name, leaving only a code name, Red Gloves. I can only say that it's really too vivid. There's a frontal photo? Huai Shi leaned forward and looked at the face in the photo. He narrowed his eyes. He looks quite friendly. Well, yes, it is said that these years for Green Sun, he has secretly contacted many forces in the present realm. The sole ability is the laughing fish tank. You have already seen it, so you should have a deep understanding. Splitting your own source into goldfish, implanting it into someone else's body, and secretly giving instructions. Before the goldfish is completely hatched, it is extremely secretive, but it can only give some hints. After hatching, it can completely turn the host into its own echo. The number of goldfish is only 7. If it is lost, it will take a long time to make up for it. As for the stigmata implanted in his body, it was from a branch of the Tombstone School, Taksin, which had already entered the 3rd stage. According to the legends, the living dead had a rather tenacious vitality. As long as his brain was still intact, there was no saying that his life would be in danger. His specialty was that he could dissolve his own sense of existence and achieve the effect of invisibility. Once the stigmata was activated, no one would notice it even if it was in a busy city. This skill was quite suitable for a certain green form. The flaw is that the invisibility effect comes from a distortion of a person's subjective consciousness, so it doesn't work on cameras, photos, or reflections. They actually investigated in such detail. Huai Shi was stunned. That's right. How else would I be able to sell it for money? Crow sighed. With the funds I have right now, I can only buy this mass-market version. Fortunately, this brother is more active, otherwise, I would have to fork out a few more. Wait, Huai Shi reacted. Where did you get the money? Crow smiled mysteriously. Huai Shi hurriedly took out his phone and saw a series of debit notifications. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The 20,000, or so that he had risked his life as a gigolo, was all gone. Moreover, Huaba had deducted more than 3,000 yuan. You scammer. Couldn't you have bought a cheaper one? There's nothing good that's cheap, Crow retorted. Besides, since you're going to die, there's no point in keeping the money, right? Who said I'm going to die? Huai Shi widened his eyes and picked up his phone. Don't I know how to call for help? Crow was stunned. He looked at Huai Shi with eyes full of astonishment, shock, and doubt, as if she was joking. Didn't you shout that you were going to kill him 2 hours ago? Crow widened his eyes. Besides, where did you learn this stupid habit of calling for help whenever you're in trouble? You're the one recorded in the Book of Destiny. Don't you have the slightest awareness of being the main character? Huai Shi was angry. He picked up her phone and pointed at the message on the screen. He's already done his third job transition. Am I a level 0 newbie going against the big boss? Even if I'm the main character, I can't be so stubborn. He's already crippled. Friend, don't you know how to deal the finishing blow? Don't be rash when you're in trouble. Killing monsters above your level gives you double the experience. Crow rolled her eyes at him, exasperated at his failure to live up to her expectations. Also, who are you going to call? Yu Dongri is still lying in the ICU. AI Qin. Before she left, she said that she's going to Jinling immediately. She's probably on the plane now. When she comes back, everything will be over. Special Affairs Department, do you have their contact information? Then, Huai Shi hesitated. How about 110? Crow looked at him quietly for a long time and sighed helplessly. What are you going to tell them? A modern fantasy story that people will think is hipster if you post it on Qidian? Besides, even if you find the Special Affairs Department, how are you going to explain to them that you know all this? You're probably a spy from Green Day. Do you believe that after you explain everything to them, they'll immediately give you a VIP card to the prison? F*CK. I can't do this. I can't do that. Huai Shi slammed the table angrily and then suddenly deflated. Then, let's just forget about it. That's fine too. Crow glanced at him. From now on, you go your way, and I'll go mine. The Red Gloves brother will get away scot-free and continue to mess around. And you set foot on the peak of life through hard work and a cheat. If you can accept it, I don't care. Huai Shi was listless. Crow shook her head, raised her wings, and patted Huai Shi on the shoulder. Young man, do you think the sister will harm you? Of course. Huai Shi stared at her. You're going to harm me from the beginning to the end. Ahem, let's not talk about the wanted criminal for now. She coughed awkwardly and said earnestly, besides, think about it. This is revenge, sacred revenge. A classic drama. A drama that the people love to see. You can only have this once in your life. Aren't you satisfied? As the owner of the Book of Destiny, since you've already become an Ascended One, you can no longer use those weak doctrines to bind yourself. Before the Council of 10 of the Directorate of Command promulgated the law of the 12 tables, there was only one law that applied to Ascended One, and that was blood for blood, a tooth for a tooth. She stared at her contractor, her scarlet eyes full of coldness. There was no longer any teasing or joking tone, as if she was declaring the truth. If there's anything I can teach you in this process, then this will be the first lesson. This world has no warmth and compassion for the weak, and it will not give the coward room to escape. Just like everything you've encountered, if you don't control fate, then fate will control you. Huai Shi was stunned and stared blankly at Crow in front of him, as if he was seeing her for the first time. Seeing his stunned expression, Crow suddenly became proud. How is it? Does it feel like you're getting to know me again? I've been thinking about such cool words all night. Hurry up and say something nice to praise me. The rare glimmer of longing in Huai Shi's heart immediately dissipated, and he began to suspect from the bottom of his heart. This big sister is so awesome. I'm afraid she's just a mouthy king who specializes in fooling a rookie like me. Although, her words seemed to make some sense. He thought for a long time, seriously sizing up Crow in front of him. Suddenly, he had a bold guess. Speaking of which, do you have any hidden battle strength? Will you transform at a critical moment? Let's fuse. You'll become armor, I'll become a saint. Crow rolled her eyes, looking at him as if he was an idiot. Let this big sister go, I'm just a bird now. Then why are you saying so much? Huai Shi stared. Do you want me to single-handedly chop that guy to death with an axe? Don't worry, no guns, no cannons. Crow looked at the courtyard outside the window. There was a car parked in the courtyard. You can still freeload off your allies. Seeing Yu Dongri's car, Huai Shi's eyes lit up. That's right, old Lou has a lot of good stuff. Soon, he dragged his pickaxe out the door. After circling around the car that Dongri left in his house a few times, he found the position of the rear window and swung his pickaxe. Old Lou, I'm going to avenge you, so don't bother about such a small matter. Bang! The red sports car, which was obviously expensive, suddenly shook. The car window was cleanly smashed open, and the alarm sounded. Fleischer fished out an iron box with the Astronomy Society's Earth logo from behind the glass. He couldn't help but laugh. It's really here. In the past 2 days, he had clearly seen that Dongri's cowherd guns and cannons were all pulled out from this box. He hoped that Dongri would leave some hope for his fellow sufferers. After opening the box, he was not disappointed. In addition to the short-barreled shotgun and 2 pistols that were already taken away, there was a military knife, a black bulletproof vest, and a seemingly awesome pistol. He didn't know the model, nor did he know the origin. In short, it looked very awesome. Fleischer casually stuffed the mate bar automatic revolver in his back pocket and put a handful of bullets into his trouser pocket. He suddenly felt a lot more confident. I have a question. Behind him, Crow helplessly sighed and shook the thing in his hand. His car keys are on the table. Why did you smash the window? I forgot. Fleischer awkwardly took the keys. He realized that he even saved the money to call a taxi. It's good that he saved money. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to call a taxi. After he got into the car, Crow, who was on his shoulder, asked one last question. Right? Do you know how to drive? Well, does driving a penguin car count on my phone? My skill level is quite high. Fleischer thought for a moment and then grabbed Crow, who wanted to get out of the car, and tied her to the passenger seat with a seatbelt. Why are you running? You want to jump into my car? Didn't you encourage me to take revenge? Sit tight, let's go. Don't. I'm not ready to die on your path of revenge. Crow also panicked and struggled hard. Why sure, I'm carsick. Really? I'll lend you some money. Can you call a taxi? Even if you order a luxurious Lincoln limousine, it's still cool. No, you should call someone. I have the contact number of the Special Affairs Department. Where's the Roman time waiting for someone? Fleischer looked at her one last time. After he hurriedly searched for how to drive on the internet, he inserted the key into the keyhole, suddenly turned it, and ignited the engine. Tom is tight, let's go. Boom! Like a mad dog that had been released from its cage, the car engine and the Crow screamed at the same time. The red sports car had already rushed out of the Chalcedony Hall, rubbing against half of the iron door, and was on the bumpy road of no return. The moonlight was covered by dark clouds at some point, and the dull sound of thunder sounded from the depths. The wind blew from the distance. It was going to rain. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.